Call to order the regular meeting of the Dayton City Council for February 13th. Stand for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Need a motion and a second for the agenda.
I'll motion. I'll second.
Okay, any changes?
Yes. Mayor, members of the City Council, give me 1/2 second here. Apologize about the delay. There are 2 items that I'd like to add tonight, or requesting to add. Item L, which will be the approval of the contract for environmental review for the Wellhead treatment plant. And item M, discussion on topics for the ballot. Please and thank you.
Anybody else?
Oh, yeah, sorry, and then we also need to remove item C out of the consent agenda that needs to be talked about. We can move that directly below the current consent agenda and have it as a separate item discussed before open forum.
Oh, okay. Okay, any more changes? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion carries 5-0. Consent. I need a motion and a second.
I'll motion.
A second, I want to talk about J.
Scott. Okay, go ahead, Scott.
In this pay request, I'm trying to understand, I was at the Park Commission meeting last week, and I believe in this pay request deal, the bridge on the north end of the park, I know we approved that for like $92,000. And I heard in the park meeting that this bridge was going to cost $250,000.
Yeah, that was when the initial estimate on it was for 90,000. When it was re-engineered, it got substantially more expensive. That's why we ended up taking it out of the project. The idea was to rebid it, but that's why both those bridges got taken out of the project. So the South Bridge and the North Bridge.
I know we took out the south one. I thought we kept the north one.
No, they both came out at the same time because they're both over budget.
I don't recall that we took the north one out.
I don't remember either. I thought we kept the north one. We got rid of the south one.
I thought we were using
bridge in there.
Contingency. I know we pushed that back at Three Rivers to increase their funding, and they
Did back.
denied that request, and so that's why it got pushed into the future. But I thought we were moving ahead with the other one.
I thought I was under the impression that we were taking both those bridges out. They both came out of the contract at the same time because of the additional costs. I don't have what the new cost is for that North Bridge on me.
I remember we discussed the North Bridge, but
I know that I spoke with you guys about it separately after because it was going on and we didn't get the prices until late on in the year. And
okay.
Well, where did the $92,000 ever come that we approved?
We knew that one was going to be bad because it came back that the bridges were way more expensive because the ground was soft.
You talking about on the south one or the north one?
Both of them came back that way.
We
and
only
we ex-nayed the south one. That I thought we had voted in favor of the north one. I could be wrong. I didn't go back and look.
I think we voted in favor of the north one.
I think at one meeting we did agree to take out the south one because we didn't know what Three Rivers were going to do.
Yep.
And then we were going to look at what the North Bridge was going to cost at the end of the day. I know that I came back after that meeting sometime and spoke to you about it, that it was going to be way more expensive than the $90,000 that we'd budgeted for. And the idea was that we would take it out and put it into the next contract. That was my understanding. Anyway.
I thought we did approve the north one, but I do remember some discussion about that. So you thought we pulled it out?
Yep.
Because the estimate was 90?
The original estimate for that bridge was something like 90,000.
92, I think it was.
92.
And then when it came back after the engineering was done and the structural stuff, and there was some soil boring issues and stuff like that, they had to put a much bigger bridge in there, and it took us over the budget for the project. So that was why we were going to take it out of there and include it in the next phase of the project. I don't have the exact numbers with me, but
so this 233 is both costs?
That's what's left over after pulling the bridges and all the extra work that we didn't do for Three Rivers Park District Bridge and some of the other stuff that we didn't do in there. So The 253 is what's remaining of the project funds at the end of the day, after everything's paid. And so the idea would be to take that and put that on this year's budget.
But okay, so I guess what's confusing to me is I thought, let me try to get to it. So there was how much was how much was pulled out of the costs?
$233,850.68.
So 233 was pulled out. That seems like less than the 90 plus whatever we put into, what we're going to put into the South Bridge.
I think the second quote on the South Bridge came around.
It came around
200 some.
600,000, but
For both of them.
Yeah.
I
For
think
north
just the
and
south,
south.
just the south one was 600.
No,
And
no.
Three
It was
Rivers
both
said no
of them.
way.
It was both of them because we had an agreement with Three Rivers to reimburse us up to
300.
up to 300,000. That included both the trail work and the bridge.
Yep.
Well, the problem is the trail work alone was, I'm going to say, roughly $100,000-ish dollars, give or take 10 grand or so. And so we only had $200,000 left of the project, and then the bridge was going to be 300 or something thousand dollars somewhere in that region. So they did not want to put any more money additional. So they said,
Yep.
kill the project. We're not doing it because it's going to cost too much money. So
Yep.
that money was not spent, and the change order was remove that South Bridge for sure. Remember, you mentioned something, Marty, at a following meeting that it was not on an agenda. It was just as a verbal update, I believe. That said we can do the North Bridge, but it's going to be expensive because the soil borings that came back were actually done at the
On the
north.
south end.
Nope, they were done on the North Bridge. We used them for and said, well, the soil will be at least this bad, if not better, but at least this bad because we used our soil borings for our project, the north side, to get the worst case scenario for the soil because it was the nearest to the river. So we did not do two different soil borings for that one. I remember this specifically because we used the worst case scenario when we looked at the soil. And we said, well, it's not going to be any much better at the other bridge, likely, so Three Rivers is going to pull their things, because then we needed to have way more engineered stuff. And it might have been 600 grand, Scott, that you mentioned. I mean, it was a lot. Because it needed to be, arched and way bigger and blah, blah, blah.
The approaches were a lot longer.
Yes.
We were looking at trying to do a box culvert there, and that wasn't going to work for whatever reason. So we explored a lot of different things there, and we ended up just pulling it.
So did we ever get an actual quote for how much it would cost to do the north one?
I do have a quote, but I don't have it with me. But I can't remember off the top of my head
Can you
what it
send it
was.
to us this week?
Yeah, I can pull it
In the
out.
park meeting, you mentioned like 250 for that North Bridge.
Yeah.
My point is it's going to, because of that happening now, so, correct me if I'm wrong, Marty, I think there's 500 allocated for this year's work in Stevens, plus this 253.
Correct.
So 753, yes.
Okay. My point is we're burning up a lot of the park money, and I think this Stevens Park needs some work. So somewhere along the line, we've got to find more money, in my opinion. Because in order to have any kind of successful functions there, we need a shelter and we need some sort of a band shelter.
Yeah, the budget set is to make sure that we can, that just kind of, the budget is an allocated amount for so many years, so we don't, quote unquote, drain that fund.
Right.
That does not mean we can't spend more than $500,000 because we can, and we have more money to do that. And we are able to do that as a city, but in the long-term plan, we tried to allocate out individual sections so we could get it done at a reasonable pace. Well, development revenue came in, so we weren't, again, draining that fund to get it down to a balance. But the city council can most certainly spend more than $500,000 if that's the direction that the council wants to go.
Well, it's another discussion at another date.
Sure.
Anyway.
So the trail going up to the North Bridge, is that in?
Yeah, it's in on both sides. The approach isn't in and the bridge isn't in, but there's a loop around there that's currently usable. You just can't get across the ravine.
Okay.
The thing we're looking for tonight is just approve these change orders so we have the minuses out of the contract so we don't owe this to the contractor anymore. But I think the bigger question is what do we do next steps for the council's perspective of this as costs have gone or were way higher than we had budgeted for. So, or maybe we just start advocating everything for poor soils and triple the price and go from there.
Yeah, I don't know. I do know we get hit with this poor soils thing quite a bit.
It's almost like Dayton's made of clay.
Well, I mean,
It's just a way to make the bill higher.
it just seems like, yeah, maybe we should be tossing in some Kentucky windage in some of our estimates because, especially in a
If that's all
ravine.
it takes,
I mean,
yes.
shocking bad soils in a ravine. I don't know.
I think to that point, I think that we need to be doing more soil boring before we go out for bid, so we're
Right.
telling them what
I wonder
they're
if
going to
that's,
get more accurate
does that make
pricing.
sense?
The borings, we talked about that. That was like $5,000 to do the borings.
We can do that. We do some of them right now, but we don't do an over an abundance of them. We do some of them before the project, but
But it seems like
we can
something like
most certainly
this,
do more. It's just,
if
you know,
it's
we're gonna-
$5,000, it
Yeah,
seems
we're gonna pay more to do more soil borings, which is fine.
Yeah.
Maybe that helps us in the long term, I don't know.
well, and then we
It
wouldn't
reduces
have,
the surprises.
yeah.
Then you already have it.
The chances of it, I mean, not that we can soil bore every square inch, but
Nope.
I mean, you could do more of them to get a better archway of the soil types, so.
Yeah.
And when that soil boring is done, we don't go and tell everybody we did it. My point is I want to be able to go back to the contractor when he says, well, you got bad soil. Then you show him the boring and say, well, we did a boring before you got there. Because a lot of the soil boring, it's just, in my opinion, a way to inflate the bill.
That might well lead to you having higher prices because they'll go to exactly
They're
the
gonna
worst
play the worst
scenario
case
possible.
scenario.
Then we get somebody else.
You're actually better protected, providing the information, and then you can point to and say you knew what was there.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, then you know the risk, and that gets rid of the whole risk question
There's no
as far as
gotcha.
soil borings
Yeah.
anyway. So we may have other surprises, but, and then, you know, we wouldn't have two trails coming right up to the ravine at this point also,
Correct.
so. Okay,
Okay.
If it's helpful, I could add on the South Bridge, on that one, we're doing the turn lanes
That's
with
right.
LC Stevens.
That's right.
So we're actually gonna be extending the culvert an additional distance to accommodate the trail to be extended. So there will not need to be a bridge, instead it'll be a box culvert
it's going
Or
back to the
extended
box
culvert.
culvert.
On the south one?
on the south one.
So you're
Three
taking the
Rivers-
park, you're taking the park out of the equation then?
No, they're actually paying for that.
Oh, they are?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. We have an agreement with them, it's gonna
They're
be
kicking in
separated
the
out.
300 grand?
I think our latest estimate was 150 to 160,000.
But they'll pay for all of that. That'll
They're
be all
paying
there.
for all
I
of that.
get that, but they were originally gonna kick in 300 and now you just gave them an out and so.
Well, they already
They
kicked in,
win on the
they
deal,
already
not
kicked in
us.
about 100 for the trail we got to keep.
Trail.
Yeah, they kicked in about 100 to 110, somewhere in there, 90, something in that range. Well, $1,000.
But still, we gotta.
So it's not quite the same, but.
Yeah.
Okay, so, that was
That was Jay.
Jay, and that was my question too. I don't have anybody else have any? Do you have any? Dave?
I don't, because we moved C down. So
Okay.
that's
Matt?
that then.
Nope, Jay was my question.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Consent is passed 5-0. Item C.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is for Brayburn Trails East for final plat approval of, I'm going to say, first phase as well as a development agreement. On the resolution, we'd like to strike item number 5. So I don't have a good image up for this, but item 5 refers to the requirement that Lot 1, Block 6 be replatted as an outlot. The intent here is that as this first phase is built, there will be a temporary cul-de-sac built on Lot 1. The city's intent is that this not be a buildable lot until the street is continued and that temporary cul-de-sac goes away. If it's an outlot, then it's guaranteed that it's not buildable. If it's a lot and block, it's dependent on staff's ability to keep track that a house should not be built here. When the temporary cul-de-sac is built, it's literally going to take up most of the housing footprint. And so physically, as long as that cul-de-sac is there, you can't physically build a house. And so the policy that we would like is that when we have these situations, it would be better that it be an outlot. In this case, there's other ways that we can figure out how to make sure that a house is not built here. So this is more advantageous for the developer, and we can figure out how to make it work as staff.
What is, you're proposing rewording this so that it's
Just
regular lot?
removing that item.
So we will
yeah.
plat, so we will plat that lot instead of calling it an outlot, so we will get, and they will have their fees paid and all the stuff related to that lot. But they physically can't build on it.
Okay.
Because the cul-de-sac takes up more than half of that lot itself.
So it's no longer a buildable lot?
Correct. Which is the concern that staff has, is that if we leave it a lot but don't cover enough of the property, they will build a house right up next to the roadway, and then we will have literally a road 1 foot or 6 inches away from the house. It's happened, so that's why we know.
Okay. So you're saying strike
Number
item
5.
Okay.
I have a question on item 6 around that one, and I guess I haven't seen this before, maybe I've just missed it, but it says the construction of the underground electrical service along the south side of 117th North will be completed with this development. The cost of the work will be split evenly with the city and the developer, and it talks about the amount, and the developer's portion is capped at 175. I guess I've not seen us paying for electrical utility work in the past, so am I just missing this, or is this something new?
This is not something new. We have done this in the past. So we did this with Brayburn Trails first edition, or their first plat, and we did the same exact agreement. We paid 50%, they paid 50% of the cost. At that time, we did not have it in the DA. We just have it via verbal agreement, I believe. Nothing was ever written down that said we were going to do it, but we did it either way. Staff's perspective now is we'd like to have everything transparent and open and have all the information in front of everybody, so which is why you're seeing it in the DA today. It is also much more advantageous for us as a city to have it in the agreement, because then they are held to having to pay it. Last time we have had no issues with it before, but it has come up in the past with other DAs. If we don't have it in there, they do not pay.
But you're wondering why
we're doing
Why
it.
are we paying?
Yeah, why are we?
Why
Is that one of the utilities that we're investing in?
So the individual providers are responsible to bring the utilities in for the service. However, they are not required to bury the services. They can install them overhead. Lines of this type, within the neighborhoods, they do have to go underground. But because this is a main feeder line, they're allowed to install it above ground. And therefore, these costs are associated with an elective operation, if
So
you will,
this is
to
the
bring them
premium
under
for
open.
burying it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, so we're splitting the cost with the developer 50/50 for those.
All
for
right.
that work.
But why is their cost capped and ours isn't?
It was per their agreement. That was what was agreed to. They said they would pay up to.
You might want to go look at that meeting. It's probably about 4 years ago.
All right.
You'll
So if it
hear
ends
some
up being a
surprises.
$400,000 bill, we got $2.25.
That's how the agreement would read.
The estimate is 350, so that, again, we'd split half, but if it goes over, then we would make up that difference.
The estimate is worthless.
Last time I think we paid 300.
I don't remember what the last, I don't remember the last
We
one.
paid or the total amount was?
No, I think that's the portion we paid.
I would say if you have
The last one?
the agreement should be 50/50, that's how it is. There is no cap.
Is it somehow bound by the previous?
I'll be honest, I don't remember if the previous had it capped. The previous was a little bit different because the lines did not exist. I think
Yeah.
you're referencing that the last cost was significantly less than this. Because it was cheaper the last time. I don't know if that's what was being referenced, but the last time the lines didn't exist, so they were bringing in new. So the additional work for the burial was the physical burial as opposed to overhead. Now the overhead exists, so they're removing the existing and burying the new. So they're replacing lines, so that's why the expense is higher. More work. Right.
And we can most certainly request from the developer to have it as a straight 50/50 and no cap. That is most certainly a request we can make to them. But that was what they agreed to in emails back and forth, so we wanted to make sure at least it got into the DA.
Personally, I'd feel better myself going that avenue because just history-wise, the city always takes it on the chin.
Well, that's what this sets up, and, it seems like shared risk is on this is fair enough. You know, I would certainly prefer to see them buried than more poles. But, you know, I don't know why we're taking on the additional risk. But I also don't know, is this the place we can do this on this development? I mean, we're at final plat.
There's, without a final DA, we can make any amendments possible, needed, requested by the council. I mean, it's not final until it's voted upon, so.
All right, well, then I would propose that this is a shared cost.
I'll second that.
No cap on the developer or us.
I could just point out one more, I don't know if this has a bearing or not, but we did include a clause in there, I believe it made it to the final draft, that if the estimate does raise at a time or the actual cost goes up at any time, we can rediscuss the terms. That doesn't necessarily mean they will agree to the additional cost, but if that does help in the decision, that we could cancel the project, if you will, if it went higher. Or talk to them and renegotiate that at that time.
Just by putting in 50/50, that takes care of it.
Or that.
So you
And
kind
you
of
don't even have to
alleviate
have,
that
and you don't even
conversation.
have to have the
Yeah,
conversation.
you're forward with it then.
Yeah, we can, whatever the council wants. Okay, so we got a motion and a second. Do we want to vote on that change? or-
Share the costs evenly.
Yep.
Yeah, so we will,
And, yeah, any other changes?
Just gotta
That's that one.
Yeah, I've got a question on Road B. That connects to from the west to the east, right? On the two pieces there. It's labeled Road B. This one here, right? This is the west side.
116th.
I got that wrong.
But just
D.
north of the park.
Nope, so, Road B would go to, 117th Avenue. It would be directly
Oh, I'm
north.
backwards. Okay, so
Yep, so Road B. and
116th Avenue north, and where it connects to the west.
That would go to the west.
Can we require that doesn't get connected until the homes are finished in this development? Because what'll happen is every semi under the sun will go through that existing development to make one big loop versus turn around, and all those roads that we just finished that are brand new roads are going to get extra heavy weight on them,
Turns are gonna get tore up.
and they're going to go right down residential roads with semis full of wood and other things. So can we request that 116th Avenue North does not get connected to the existing development until these homes are completed? I want it connected, just not until they're done
Well, I mean,
driving semis.
We
on.
can blockade it and
Yeah, would a physical barricade suffice? It'd be.
So you're
more
gonna go out there
cost-effective.
every week and make sure that the truckers don't just move the barricade and we'll use it anyways?
Well, I could even use jersey barriers.
Yeah.
or
Sure,
something.
that's fine. I'm fine
Put
with that.
heavy stuff in
Yeah,
the way, sure.
yeah, but I mean, the neighborhood to the west of us is not supposed to use our road, and I can tell you on a daily basis because I look out over that road, semis are going up and down it every single day, regardless of the fact that as part of the agreement they're not supposed to use it. So the least we can do is protect the existing Brayburn Trails folks. We have to go through that because that's not. Same with is it Kingsview by us too for Riverwalk. They're going all different directions and they're not using Pioneer like they're supposed to. So we should be
Yeah, I
protecting
don't-
that neighborhood against it.
I don't think that needs to be in the development agreement, but we can,
As long as it gets done,
yeah.
I'm fine with it. Yep. Okay.
anything else? Okay, so there are two adjustments, strike number 5 and 6, change to share 50/50 of the final cost. We got a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed, say no. Motion carries 5-0.
Yeah, if they are not in agreement with it, then we will certainly come back to the council,
Yeah.
as it will not be approved because it doesn't meet all the conditions.
Right.
Okay. On to open forum. If anybody? Donna?
So if we have anyone online that wanted to speak in open forum, if you use the raise your hand function. I don't. Nope, we're good.
Okay, on to staff consultant council update. Zach.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. I don't have a lot of updates that I haven't provided in the weekly updates. I've been pretty extensive with those this year. It's been a very busy year, but do want to provide a little bit of more information on the Wellhead treatment plant and environmental stuff. Obviously, that'll be approved tonight, but I had one final call with HUD today and their administration team, and we have to draft a letter to them to basically explain where we're at and kind of keep us moving in the path of movement with that treatment plant. So I will send that letter off, and I can send the letter to the council as well if they'd like to see it. Just the letter that we sent to HUD to give them information of where we're at and what we're asking them to do. But continue to move forward and keep
Did
plugging
they
as best we can.
seem pretty,
Overall, the perspective seems to be good.
okay.
Not poor, which is good. It could be poor based on certain things that they're looking at. Jason's been on almost every call with me. Overall, I appreciate all the help and support from the staff here and council as well for updates, but just trying to keep that funding moving. So
Okay.
pause, but no pause kind of at the same time. That's all I got for updates. I've done enough in the weekly ones, so thank you.
Any?
This Friday starts direct balloting for the presidential primary coming up. So we have not been extremely busy. It's not a well-attended election. However, it's the same amount of work to put on. So just busy with election stuff.
Marty?
Mayor and Council, I have a few updates tonight. Wellhead treatment plant is mostly concrete work. They've been pouring concrete in the basins, and they're putting the slope in the basins at the moment. A lot of that is curing at the moment. Next 2 weeks, they're going to be pouring, getting ready to pour the actual floor of the building, which caps off the basins underneath. So they're going to be putting in a shoring system and a lot more rebar in there. And then they'll be installing the forms. They'll probably be pouring in a couple of weeks' time there to finish that off. We've also been keeping up to date with submittals for drawings and stuff like that to keep that moving as much as we can. A few general things. We've had a couple of staff move around. We've had one member of staff having recurring health issues, so he's a full-time person. We have changed him to a part-time position, and one of the part-time guys has been put up to a full-time position, so it's a nice swap. I intend to advertise this week for the 2 part-time employees and the 3 seasonal staff that we budgeted for in the budget this year. I want to get that out this week.
Is your seasonal team coming back again from last year?
No, they graduated to other things, so unfortunately we won't have those guys back. We have received one of the new pickups that we originally ordered in 2022. That arrived 2 weeks ago now. The other pickup will be here in May. The 1 ton that we ordered is expected next week, and then it goes to have the body put in, so we'll probably have that back to us by June. Single axle and tandem axle chassis will be delivered ready at the body plough fitting shop at the end of February, and we're expecting delivery of those by June or July. So we should have all of our vehicles that we've been waiting for such a long time in the next few months. On equipment side, we're looking to purchase a used bucket truck, and that is included in the 2024 CIP. The ones that we've been looking at so far that look good have been snapped up pretty quickly before we can actually get there. What I'm asking the council is, would it be possible for us to purchase this without having a staff report, because that 2-week period between council meetings can sometimes be a deterrent. We won't get there in time. So if we could do something, I think we've done something like this before where we have a limitation of $150,000, which is the CIP number. As long as we don't exceed that, then we can just go ahead and make that purchase.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
I understand the market and where it's at, and you have to be on top
Yeah,
of it.
he's pretty stoic right
I
now.
want to hear
Yeah.
Scott.
This is how I'll word it.
You already said used, in fairness. Looking at used ones.
No, I caught that right away.
Okay. Just wanna make sure you
I
didn't miss-
commend you for that. The issue that I have with wildly spending, not wildly, that's the wrong word to use. We're coming up to a topic here that I guess in my eyes has a lot of concern for me. And I think this should have been one of the first things that we talked about spending money on. Before we spent $1.5 million on staff, before we spent $1 million on, and I do like it. I mean, I prefer gravel or blacktop versus gravel. This pavement management plan, in my opinion, is going to cost a lot of dollars. So,
Will you let Marty spend 150 on a boom truck?
what's the purpose of it?
This is for tree trimming and changing lights out and stuff like that. We're getting more utilities. Street lights are going to be ours to maintain as we go along, so it's going to be a requirement for doing that. Plus, doing stuff in the shop and changing lights and stuff out.
It'll hang Christmas decorations and all the light bulbs too.
I don't know if we've got the skills base for that.
Probably, you'll have to hire a full-time guy, I'm sure.
I like the way you think, Scott.
No ideas.
Easy come, easy go.
So,
I'm okay with this approach because it's in the CIP.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
also, I personally
Well-
got burned on this kind of a deal too, where you find what you want and then it's gone before you can get through all the approvals. And I bought a pickup truck one time, using my company credit card, and that resulted in a pretty good hand spanking. But it was the same problem. We couldn't get the paperwork done in time to, they wouldn't hold it long enough, and so I get where you're at.
it was in the approved budget for next year?
Yeah.
So
This
up to
year.
150 rather?
This year.
Or for this year?
Yeah.
So, okay.
Already approved it once, right?
All right, so we will need a motion
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
to let Marty spend up to 150 on the used
Yeah,
bucket truck.
it'll still come back to you guys for approval, but it'll just be after we've already.
After the
approved it.
fact.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so Dave and Matt.
It's not like the first time that's ever happened.
For a long time.
Keep digging at that wound. All right. Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Motion carries 5-0. Okay.
That's all I have.
Regarding the Wellhead facility, so I know that HUD has said stop spending bills that the grant can't pay,
Yep,
or are they saying we can't do anything
yes,
because of the
Second.
environmental?
correct.
All right.
So we are trying to get them to allow us to get to a safe stopping
Yeah.
point, which is essentially, putting the lid on and putting the shoring back up and getting the site back so that if a kid goes there when they're playing
Right.
over Hills Park and jumps on the thing,
Yeah.
they're not falling down a 14-foot basin
Yeah.
and cracking their head open.
Yeah, I was just hoping we could spend some of that 175 and instead.
Yes, they have said non-HUD and HUD funds, so we are trying to work with them to figure out.
Safety.
Safety
Yeah.
is number one. Second one is, can we keep the vessels in the order, because they're not on site, they're off site. We're not spending your money as well, we're spending our money still, but, they're off site, they're not approving anything on the site, but they're still in the queue, so that we're not waiting for them once we.
Pushing that around, yeah.
Yeah, once
Right.
we get to a point of approval, so. We're
it's-
going to continue through that process. but-
Okay. All right, Gary?
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. You talk about accessibility to used fire trucks or used equipment. We potentially have a sale on the Engine 11. Currently just waiting I sent them a bill of sale today. My preference with them is to wire the money back to the city, so we're waiting on that from them. But I'm glad to be out of that business because we've had a lot of activity on the truck. We did raise the price from original $425 to $450 based on the advertised costs that are associated with the website. Will net $422,500. So we're about netting $425, but the 5% we need to pay to Brindley for their advertisement in that capacity. So that will probably be gone here within the next, say, couple weeks, couple things that need to be removed from it, and then we'll be down the road on that. Lastly, the office expansion upstairs is just about complete, so that'll probably be complete by next week sometime.
How's the hiring process going?
We have probably have something on that for the next council meeting.
Evening, Mayor, members of the council. Been working with a company called Project Delta to get a facility therapy dog for the police department. It will start off as a facility therapy dog. It will live there 24 hours a day, and then eventually be trained into going out to mental health calls. As of right now, the company is going to donate everything provided for the dog, including food and vet bills. So it will cost nothing to the city. Just wondering if you guys are entertain the idea, think it's interesting, or just want me to drop it, because if I'd like to move forward with it and get a facility therapy dog for our PD.
They keep it on site? Or-
Yep, it will be
Okay.
on
Stay
site
at
24
Public
hours a day in the police department.
I think it's a good.
Staff
Sounds to me like
24/7.
it's a
I
good
mean, it's
idea.
gonna have.
Okay,
plenty
I
of-
will-
I like
It seems to
yeah.
me it provides an opportunity for discussion at the site, at the disturbance. So.
Yep. So you want me to bring it back to council at the next council meeting, or just go ahead and keep on moving forward unless we find out that there's no donation or anything like that?
So currently, there's not no $10,000 or $20,000 costs that we're not hearing.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, do they provide like dog beds and all that kind of fun stuff?
They
too, or
do provide the dog bed. The city of Minnetonka has one, and it sounds like employees have bought like 7 or 8 of them to bring in. So a lot of the employees will buy their own stuff too. But the vet bills, the food, and the cost of the dog is covered by.
The most expensive parts are covered.
Correct.
Are these this facility? Is it? Do they also provide dogs for
Vets.
vets, PTSD? Okay.
That's how they started out, and then they slowly moved into the police departments.
Sure.
They're fairly new. Project Delta is fairly new with police departments. There's other companies out there that have been doing police departments for years.
So this will be at the police department full time.
I'll even bring it to a council meeting so you guys can stay calm. Other than that, we went up to Alexandria last week for recruitment. I don't want to go into too many details, but it does not look promising. We'll be in Mankato the end of the month for another recruiting session at their college. And then all our officers today did their annual defensive tactics.
Not promising for counts or for quality.
Second year students at Alex is 60, and the quality is not good.
Okay. I seen you're doing a gun safety course.
Yeah, we are doing a gun safety course. We're currently only opening it up to employees, families, council families, stuff like that. They have to be age 11. And it starts in April. I think the first Tuesday in April 4th, I believe.
They have to be exactly 11 or 11 plus?
11 plus.
Okay, just make sure.
So it's, we're opening it up to that, being it's our first time doing it, limit to 15 kids, because with parents and everybody else, it will get busy. So first time, if we don't end up with enough kids, we'll open it up citywide. We'll put it on Facebook. So.
Is it open to adults that want to take it that don't have kids?
Yep.
Okay.
Cool. John?
Community development, so March will be busy. We've got 4 or 5 projects that'll be on the agendas.
Jason?
We will have some engineering projects as well, just a heads up what's coming. They'll have proposals in front of you for a design of a trail segment between Cloquet Overlook Park and North Diamond Lake Road. Another one for a feasibility study for 113th Avenue, which we actually had a meeting today with a few of the property owners that showed up for an open house and discussed that. And then we will also be bringing forth the 2024 mill and overlay plans, which is 152nd and Thicket Hills Lane. That'll all be at the next meeting. Oh, as well as the plans for well house number 5 at the next meeting, and approval of plans and authorization of bids. And then the turn lane plans, we anticipate the first meeting in March, depending on the county review. It's at the county now being reviewed for approvals. So if that moves forward, we expect that at the first meeting in March.
Somewhere in that area, you'll know roughly when they're gonna do that project and when it might be completed,
Their mill and overlay,
right?
they did slide the start date back to July 20th for the start. I don't know when the completion is, but then they're just allowed to do it within that window.
Weeks, probably.
Yeah, well, I don't know if they'll start on the 20th. They just have a window for them. I expect it to be I mean, it's a long stretch of road, but it's a relatively quick
Yeah,
process,
yeah.
so they should move pretty swift through there. We have given them dates as far as, like Danielle sent over some dates of weddings booked at Dulcie Stevens, to just make sure they're not working on those days. So we gave them some restrictions of when we wanted them out there. That's all I have.
The only thing I have, and this is again for another discussion, we don't have to address anything now. I went to the Lions meeting last Wednesday and discussed a little bit about whether or not the Lions had interest in doing the Riverfest thing, but this also ties in to getting Stevens Park all, it may not work out just because of the roadways and all that. What can be done to enhance that whole situation about Riverfest? And the Lions are more than willing to partner on some sort of a deal, and just kind of discussing where it goes.
So is it gonna collide with the county, I guess?
It
that's
certainly
the
would. I
question,
mean, that's
right?
good. If they don't start till July 20th, it's not gonna be done till sometime in August, realistically.
Yeah, and again, it's just an open window for them.
Right.
It's a large project throughout the metro, really, or
Right.
throughout the county. But
So this year may not be the year to be trying to do anything at Stevens,
It's 3 years in a row.
As far as event wise,
as far as event-wise, yeah.
Travis?
nothing from you.
I have nothing.
Nothing for me.
I've got a couple of things. I want to say thanks again to those that attended the 113th open house. I was there. It was good to hear what they had to say. Marty, I had a question about Leathers Park. So on our website, there's no plan of kind of what the ideal view of Leathers is. I know there was one in a parks packet a while back. It was
Yep.
colorful, had a little statue in the middle, paved parking area.
Yep.
Are we no longer pursuing that plan, or?
No, that's still going
Okay.
on.
Can we just get a picture of that back
Yep.
up on the site? That'd be
Yep.
awesome.
No
Someone thought
problem.
maybe we were done doing it because the picture had come down and we just given up on Leathers Park. And I was like, not that I've heard of, but I'll check.
No, it's just gone through the first stage of growth. It needs to be trimmed up, so the contractor is going to come back and trim that up, and then it's going to start looking like something. It's still got a lot of the cover crop showing through at the moment, so once that's trimmed off and the other stuff starts coming through, the prairie stuff comes through, then it'll start looking like something this year. So I can get the original concept plan back up on the website. That's not a problem.
We already have paths in there, great with the P
Yeah,
paths or whatever.
They are. They're going to be mowed trails through there originally, initially to see how those wear.
Okay.
Depending on if there's a lot of wear and tear on those, we might put them into a gravel or something like that. But let's see where we go from the initial concept from that.
And we have plans to pave that parking area. So
No, it's going to stay as a gravel parking lot the way it is currently.
okay. And then, Jason, did we? And maybe we did, and I just had forgotten. But did we ever get a list of rating intersections danger level?
So we've gone through 2 iterations. We went through general counts to find all of the intersections and which ones ranked highest, if you will. And then we went through and we picked the top 10 at a staff level.
Okay.
And then we're getting counts right now. In
Okay.
fact, maybe they've already got the counts. I'd have to double check. So specific turning movement counts at those intersections to find out what the inefficiencies might be or what specific improvements might be fitting.
And when will we see the final results of that?
I'd have to look back at the schedule. I
Ballpark?
think it was this spring.
Okay.
So I want to say like May. I'd have to double check, but I think
thought
around
it was
May.
April. But it was,
Was it April? Okay.
Or first meeting in May. One of those.
It may have been. This is kind of the last data collection, if you will, which there's been 2 rounds of it, which there's a little delay just coordinating with the third party on those. This will be the last collection, and then from this point, it's just assembling and doing the analysis and then creating the recommendations.
Right. That's all I have. Thank you.
Regarding Leathers, I'm somebody who thinks we should find another avenue for that park. I mean, this comes up over and over and over again. And it wouldn't hurt my feelings at all if it disappeared. So,
I had a resident call me today and say he uses it all the time, but he was concerned that the map had come down, that we had given up on it. He wanted to pave parking lot. I was like, I don't know what the plan is. So he was asking about it. So I don't know. I'm impartial to it. I don't use it, but
Before you pave that, you'd pave this parking lot. Or
I don't disagree. I didn't mean the paving part. I meant the getting rid of the parking altogether.
Yeah.
Like, public space is good to have. So
sometimes, yes.
Best case scenario would be 2 houses on there or something.
All right. Okay, council business action items. You want to jump right to K, right, not L? Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Pavement management plan.
Evening, Mayor and Council. I'll try to go through the background and history of this quickly, and then I'll touch on some of the highlights of the plan and just show some of the information, and then we can have some more discussion. Just to let you know, no formal action needed tonight to go into the next step, but we are asking for some feedback just to accept the report, acknowledge that it's of use for use, and then also some guidance, if any, desired for which of the budget scenarios might be considered or how this might be planned in the future. I'll get into more detail on that towards the end of the presentation, but again, nothing formal requested tonight. It's more of an informational session. So the previous system that was done prior to this being prepared was for about the 70 miles that the city maintains. The assessments were done with literally somebody driving around town saying that's about a 5 or that's about a 3, and based on the condition, coming up with a rating. Staff getting together and say we have this much to spend. Here's the projects that we think make sense, and putting them together. So that was essentially the process. Difficult to do a system-wide analysis on that basis because there's different factors, and it was more as a subjective process, if you will. So part of the benefit of having this new system in place is the assessment is all automated. So it's sophisticated equipment taking measurements, photographs, and different non-destructive testing to determine the true condition of the roadway, which is consistently done throughout the entire system. So you have a very comparable system across all of the roadways. That information is loaded into a GIS database, which is comprehensive. All the information is stored there, and it's easy to update in the future when situations change. Roads are added, conditions are updated, whatever it might be. With it, there's a lot of algorithms and built-in math that helps project or put together different scenarios for implementation of the plan, whether that be budget-based or condition-driven or performance-based, and I'll explain that a little bit more in upcoming slides as well. So just recap on the status. The assessments were done early in the summer of 2023, which was well ahead of schedule. The program itself was built out for the city of Dayton together with our GIS group. The treatment strategies were developed with Public Works and unit costs identified for the actual strategies for the improvements of the roadway. We did look at 4 budget scenarios, one of them being do nothing, so I'm kind of considering that 3 budget scenarios. The do nothing is an easy one. With those scenarios, annual project recommendations are generated by the program. And again, we can discuss that more as needed. The final report has been prepared and submitted. So the assessment itself, and I'll go through this quickly, but just to let folks know what's involved. So there's 3 indices identified for the roadways. The ride comfort index is essentially the smoothness. That's how nice does it ride? You can have a lot of cracks in the pavement and it rides great and you have a high rating. And then the surface distress index, which is the actual condition. Is there rutting? Is there severe cracking? Is there other irregularities? Is there other conditions? And then the PQI is the pavement quality index. That's kind of the overall rating. That's the one we pay attention to, and that is simply a function of the ride quality and the structural, the surface distresses. So
weren't one of these two supposed to do sonar into the ground to see the quality?
That was an add-on. So that was a structural, that was a subsurface. So that it was elected to not do it with this round. It could be done with the next round if we wanted to do that.
So that part was never done?
No, that was an additional service on there, and it was chosen to just go with the basic on it. So,
Okay.
So that was the kind of the structural integrity of the
Yeah,
below the surface?
It helps, and I don't know all of the data that's extracted from it, but it helps with the underlying soils. It doesn't give you soil types necessarily, but it'll give you some of the resistance measures of how dense it is, kind of. So it'll give you a general feel if the underlying soils are poor or strong,
Sure.
so
So
to speak.
I think I read this right, but we are using, you put in a kind of an assumption that of like 50 for those, for that measure, even though we didn't do it, you just plug a number in there.
Mm-hmm.
Did that number then go into this overall PQI?
That does get factored through the system, yes.
Because doesn't that pull that overall number down a bit if we're using essentially the bottom of
If
the?
you're talking the 50 for the subsurface quality,
Yes.
yeah, that could influence, but it's, again, because the information wasn't there, it influences evenly across the system. So
Yeah.
it could read artificially low or high, but with respect to others, it would be respectively the same.
Yeah, I'm just thinking with the other numbers and what I've seen in the report so far that, you know, they're kind of in that some good, but a lot of fair and some poor. Well, we're really assuming that all of that sub-base stuff is poor or just barely fair.
Yeah.
Well,
And
we
so
call it
it-
adequate,
Yeah.
I suppose,
But I'm-
which is probably representative of what's existing. There's probably more variation. Obviously, it's not all 50. We probably have a bigger range in there. Some parts of town, so we measure by what's called a resistance value. So we have geotechnical engineers go in there and tell us what's your R value, is what we call it. So if it's complete muck that you'd find at the bottom of the pond, you're going to get like a 5. If it's decent sand or something good, you're probably going to get 50, 60, maybe even 80, something good to build on. We've seen everything from 8 on South Diamond Lake Road to probably like a 30. I think on part of Pineview here was a little bit higher. So we're kind of in that, and that would probably equate to about a 50, probably the 20 to 30 R value range. That's not a one-to-one by any means. That's just kind of my best guess on how that is. So I would say it probably does represent generally the average across of it. So again, if or when the evaluations or the assessment is redone, that could be an add-on service if there'd be more comfort in the number having that. I mean, that's absolutely something that can be added on to it.
Okay, thank you.
And then just to finish that, each of these indices is ranked on a 0 to 100, and then the parameters are just what is identified in the report as a failed section, a poor section, a fair section, a good section, are as shown. So as mentioned, seems like a lot of red and orange on this. We had the same reaction, but something that could be pointed out is a 50 is much different than a 20, and they would both show as red. So, but also how many categories do you make? So
correct.
It's kind of a balance.
So in other words, this sonar thing that was originally, we talked about this truck that was gonna drive around and grade all these roads never really happened.
Oh, no, that was there. The sonar is an additional piece of equipment that hauls as a trailer.
Okay.
There's 3 different grading systems.
And then
it has
they
on the
have to
truck.
stop in areas to do the testing, is my understanding. So it adds a pretty significant amount of time, and that's why the extra charge for it.
So we didn't just throw a number at, a dart at that.
Oh, no, these were actually
Just map?
tested. I mean, there's spreadsheets, there's miles of raw
Nothing
data
checked.
with all of this on there.
You know, the truck went around, it just didn't have the trailer with the
Yeah.
subsurface.
It's mostly the time that it adds, and that's why it's an additional charge. If it was just a matter of pulling a trailer, it would be the same cost. But
We
they
got
have to
2 of
stop
3 data points from the
periodically.
truck. Are you at a stopping point or not?
Oh, I can be, if there's a question.
No, I'll wait till you're done. I've got
Oh,
a bunch
yeah.
of questions, but
I
I
know.
didn't know if this up if you were done. That's why I was waiting.
Nope. So I'm not going to go through this slide, but on the left is the strategy, the treatment strategies that we went through with Public Works. So that's the different types of treatments that we figured are as universal as maybe practical, the appropriate number to have. Now, when we get into specific design, it may vary from those slightly depending on true soil conditions and others.
And chip, that's the little rocks, buck chip buck.
Yeah.
I thought years ago we decided that was worthless.
Sure, and I can stop on that. So chip seal, and I'll say it, I've been doing this a while, and about every 7 years, everybody thinks it's the worst thing in the world, and then they start doing it again.
Yeah.
I'll admit I move right with them. I kind of have my ups and downs because they show great cases for all these changes. One thing that we've learned and just kind of in the industry is a lot of the chip seal is when they bond it. So they spray down an oil, they put the rock on there. The bond isn't necessarily great. It doesn't really it's hard to get the amounts right. It's hard to get it in there. So the turning movements of the vehicles can break those rocks loose. And then the water gets in there anyway, and it kind of defeats its purpose. So what they found is if you do a fog seal treatment, which is just a liquid, essentially, I kind of think of it, it's maybe a poor analogy, but of like a lacquer or some kind of a clear coat on the top that just kind of shrink wraps to it, if you will, and creates a bond to hold it all in place and better seal it. Much better product. Very cheap application. One downside, the placement of the chip is a very quick process. You can drive on it essentially immediately after. The fog seal you have to keep off of it for some length of time. Not the end of the world if a car goes on it, but you don't want to run a bunch of traffic on it. So you need to detour traffic with it. So there is a downside, but the treatment itself is very cost, and the benefit of adding it is very good. So
Some
that's
length
the
of
reason
time,
that
like a
was-
weekend, or some length of time, like
No,
7 weeks?
No, not at all. It's
Hours.
I'm intentionally
but
picking
it-
extremes here. That's
Oh,
why.
hours.
Do it at 8, drive out
Maybe
at 5 or
even-
something like that?
I'd have to look what the recommended is, but I think it's like a handful of hours.
Okay.
The only thing is in Minnesota, the first winter is gonna take care of all of it, because that crack that was there, it'll be back there the next spring.
The cracks reflect, absolutely. Yeah, they come back
So
through, and
it's-
that's
it's
why
basic.
staying
It's
aggressive
basic.
with the crack repair, and Marty has that in-house. So staying on top of that
Right.
is the cheapest insurance to
Yeah.
preserve your roads way back.
It's like seal
roadways by
coating your
far.
driveway, 1 year, and that's all it's good for.
I will say, I saw, I think there were 2 of these in the packet that we got, and I do
There-
like that we have these decision trees for staff to use of kind of when are we going to do what. It's very consistent. We know what's going on. It's planned out, and it's not like we're throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Yeah, the high intent, and this can help share with public, and it takes the subjectivity, right? It's not, we felt this was the right thing, it was, we followed this process. There might be a reason to go a different route. I mean, there might be outside factors influencing it, but, yeah, and the reason there was 2 of these is one, and they're very, very consistent, but one's for collectors, one for the local streets. So there's a few modifications, and they're very subtle, so I only included one in here, but I'm guessing none of us are gonna read this on the screen right now, so. So then the budget scenarios, as I mentioned, there's 2 methods that you can utilize the software to produce. One of them is budget-based, so basically you say, we have this much money to spend, what project should we do? The other one is performance-based, we want our roads to be in this good of condition, how do we get there? How much do we have to spend to do projects? So you basically set a target and a timeline, and it says how much that needs to be spent to accomplish your goal. For the purposes of this report, we ran the 4 scenarios, and one is essentially not a scenario in my mind, but we always have to include the do nothing. So if you do nothing, it costs you nothing, and you'll see on the next slide that the roads deteriorate. We put in a budget as a scenario of $1 million per year. That's approximately the spending that's put into pavement projects today.
Yep.
That's, I don't know how far back we looked, the last couple of years at
Yeah,
least.
it's in the last, I would say the last 3 years.
Just the last 3. Prior to that, we were at about $250 a year.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was pretty low. We did some small overlay projects,
Yep.
and then we held off, and then we did Zanzibar, and, but yeah, so about $1 million. We put in the $1.5 million, just as, okay, if it was an incremental, additional spending on it. And then we set a performance goal, and this is a pretty, I don't know, standard or common goal is to get your system around 70. That's a good place to be. If you can get a system that's at 70, I mean, if all your roads are above 70, at some point you're going to be in a world of hurt, because they're going to all deteriorate, and you're going to have some significant improvements. Not that you want bad roads, but you want kind of a breadth of conditions.
You want them to tire at the right
Yeah, you
staggering
want to
time.
keep steady input to keep them
Did
going
you,
on that. So
and maybe you're getting to this, but do you have these broken out into MSA roads or?
Interesting you bring that up. We don't in the report.
Okay.
I actually just today, we went through a scenario of redesignating some of the roads to try to get your allotment to
Right.
increase. So
That is
we
the-
might be
yep.
moving some of those right now because
Okay.
we actually have a pretty significant, seems significant, 3.7 miles of unused balance, which is an opportunity to designate more roads, create more needs, which is higher allotment for us.
And
So
I thought that wasn't that allotment, forgetting what you're talking about right now, but aren't we currently set up for about 350 a year, give or take?
for construction, yeah,
For
I think
MSA.
it's 370. I don't
Okay.
know what that handy
I can get that, just give me a
But
Yeah,
it's
I think
still,
it's-
it
Yeah, I
gets
think
us.
it's about 370. It's not gonna be that we'll bounce you to the 600,000 by any means, but
Yep.
anything we can get on the system, and it's based on mileage, so anything we can get designated with higher the higher the mileage, the better. It generates more money for the city or more revenue for the state aid. But to answer your question, no, that is not incorporated into this report.
Okay. That's good.
Because it'd be changing.
It'll help.
So the 1.5, and then again, the performance base, and just a note, and I don't know if I have this in one of the slides or not, but setting that goal created an average spending of just over $2 million a year in the recommended projects. So just to give you an idea of what that would cost to get to that
I've
point.
got a quick question for you before you move on. So you said you can run other scenarios. Is this like we get a change request and pay you guys a bunch of money to run a scenario? Is this like you enter one number in and 10 minutes later it spits it out, so we're not really paying to get the other
It's-
scenarios run, or where are we at on that?
So the package, the deliverable is the static report,
Okay.
but it is a live system. We can update at any time.
Like Marty can do it? Like who's we? You say we?
Yeah, sorry, Stantec can
Stantec,
do. Marty doesn't have a license or access to the software. I mean, that's something that could be added if you wanted to bring that in-house. I think we talked
But
about
it's
costs. I
probably
don't remember
fairly
what it is.
linear, right? I mean, there are not gonna be any surprises, so I would think you could still run scenarios to almost just with a calculator.
Oh,
Yeah, but let's
Pretty
say
much.
let's just say we decided one. I'm just picking a number. 1.75 was the right number, million, right?
Yeah.
The current report tells us which roads we should do which year. If we wouldn't know exactly which roads to do which year, we'd have to rerun it. So I'm trying to figure out: are we going to pay to have to get it rerun, or is this oh yeah, I just put in 1.75 and I get a report and I give it to you, Matt? Like literally, we're not going to charge you because it's just that simple. And that's what I'm trying to figure
yeah.
out.
Well, I'm not going to say it's zero charge, but it's not like we're charging for a second report.
So it's
not
like
we're-
$200.
I'd have to see how many hours it is. It actually might not be all that far.
Okay.
I don't know.
Take more than a half an hour.
It might. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just gonna let everybody know we do not have the staff capacity or brain power to use this thing.
Yeah.
It is extremely complicated, and we looked at the back end of things with Jason and Martin and I both agreed that unless we get some guru who knows GIS and can do the reports,
There's
and
a
stuff,
lot of
there's a lot of
lot
stuff.
of parts behind all of this.
Yeah, I imagine so. I was just curious of
Yep.
what, like,
No, it's
once you have everything put together, if it's like you've got sliders at the top, you can move around and then it spits out the results or not.
It kind of does. Yeah,
Okay.
it does do that. It's pretty quick. They ran it. Yeah, Zach and Marty were both in on the demo. I mean, they can run demos pretty quick and get you answers and change parameters.
Thank
The
you.
other thing I guess I'll just mention on that point is as far as what if we want changes. I was going to bring this up on a later slide, but our recommendation, this is what's typically done, is they're reassessed the roads are reassessed every 3 years. So we bring the truck out, it drives around. At that point, you really need to update the report. So this projects out 5 years, but you're probably only going to follow it for 3. And then the report will run. But it gives you that guidance. And I just talked through it too. The recommended projects, you might need to do some tweaking on it depending on outside parameters, or that doesn't make sense because we're doing the project over here later, or we think there's going to be a development, let's delay that one and pull something else back. So this is really a guide. It's not a strict, you have to do this.
Yeah.
Same with the scenario. I mean, you could pick, let's stick with the $1 million a year right now because we're not sure where the funding's coming from. Next year, you identify, hey, we can allot 1.7. Let's run that scenario. Let's actually type in the 1.7 and rerun it. We can do that on the fly. You're not committing indefinitely to any of these decisions either. So,
Thank you.
The answer to your question, 350 is our annual allotment, at least we got from 2023, 350,000 for MSA.
A little higher.
That's about what I,
Yeah, it might be a little higher for 24, but.
Yeah.
and we're free and clear of the loan we took out from it, right?
Small balance.
Small balance of minimal.
So this, if I remember right, and I don't remember the dollar amount, but this allotment will exceed the remainder of the payoff. So the account will go back to black.
Good, okay.
I don't know by how much, and I don't know if you have that in there.
Minimal dollars.
They don't do the allotment until I think late
Yeah.
February, so we haven't seen it yet. I'd have to go back in their books to see what it will be, but. This slide just shows the projected results. So as you can expect, the do nothing is the bottom line. So if you don't do any improvements overall, and these are projected deteriorations, these would be upgraded or updated every time you run the assessment citywide. What appears to be the blue line, the second one up, that's the $1 million. It doesn't look like it's matching the color. Oh yeah, it is. Okay. That's the $1 million scenario. Again, that's the approximate track you've been on and are on now. So as you can see, it generally holds steady. It keeps it pretty flat. The 1.5 looks to at least trend in an upward improvement on the system wide, which is favorable. And then again, as expected, the fourth scenario after a 5-year cycle, you'd be up above 70. So.
And if we scaled, I mean, if we bumped that a certain amount, I mean, we'd eventually get to the 70 that route also. It's
Yeah.
just a matter of how quickly we get
That
there.
road being the 1.5 route.
Yeah. Is there any way to get to backfill in previous years just to see our trajectory or?
Like if we, yeah.
I mean, you know, we did it
Yeah.
manually, but
I
we didn't have
don't
actual
know how we'd have
measurements.
to. I don't. Subjective. I mean, it would be
Yep.
Marty's guys driving around.
So
and
the old
they
method
said
of
4 or
doing
5.
it, does it meld well with this?
Well, I mean, you could align them. I mean, the pacer rating. I think you guys were doing a 1 to 5. It was the pacer, so they were ranking 1 to 5. I mean, you could just prorate that to a scale of 100 and line them up. I think it'd take quite a bit of manual labor, to be honest. To just get
Yeah,
the
it's not
info
that
in, but-
important, and it may be apples and oranges. I was curious. I always like to see direction things are going, but
But in terms of benchmarking, I know you mentioned 70 is kind of the shoot for goal.
That's a pretty
to
common
maintain. Do
target
we know
in-
what
in
other
systems.
communities do, or does the county have a similar rating system? What's their
That's
standard, 100?
30 for the county.
Depends on where in the county.
Right, well, you know, the parts of the county that they see,
that they drive up.
yeah.
70 is what we typically hear. That's kind of the common. And then there's some weird stuff down in the bottom. So if you start getting into like a 40, you know, rehab might not make sense. So you might purposely leave some sections and let them go to 0 and then do a full reconstruct. So it gets a little trickier with those at the bottom. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure it does vary some. I guess I don't know of any specific examples to cite, but 70 is what I asked that exact question of the group that puts this together. They're actually down in Arizona. They do this across North America, and 70 is almost always what's used. Same with these ranges, because Zach and Marty and I met, and we didn't like all the orange and red, and it's like, this really paints a dismal picture. Can we maybe shift those up a little bit so it looks better? And I was kind of talked out of it because these are really kind of the industry standard. These are the norms that people use, so it'd be comparable to what other communities might have. This probably sets the more realistic picture, if you will. So
Yeah, the ranges are tough because good is 70. So basically, like, we want to be just at the pinnacle of good, like, or just at the base of good.
Yeah.
Not like into good. We just want to be
you're
just there so it looks
past,
green.
10 days
Yeah.
past good, it looks crappy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
No, I agree. And like I said, the 50 to 20 that's a huge span in road condition.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're dropping 30% and it shows the same color. So
So, but why would, on this map, there's 35.3 miles of poor roads in this city, according to this deal.
or I had that one somewhere.
The 5-year plan doesn't take care of all of those roads in 5 years,
No, it doesn't.
because $10 million won't fix 35 miles of road.
Right.
Yeah, but some of those
Yeah.
poor roads are like 1 point off of Fay right now. That's my point of like,
Right.
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah, if you-
and I'll also point out, which why if you're done, is 146, which is the street I live on, is a 2-year-old road by the time this was done, and it's considered fair.
Fair, right.
Which has me asking a question. We rely on developers to build roads. Should we be doing that? Like, there's a lot to talk about in this, but that's one thing I want to make sure we bring up is, should we be building the roads and billing them back for it, so we can build them to our quality? Because if they're 2 years old on a brand new road and it's in fair condition, that just seems
But
bizarre.
fair's not bad.
Well, this is where, well, it's not green and it's not 70, and
I
that's our
understand
goal.
that.
So this is where, like, I think we need to think, A, about how do we budget to fix roads that are there.
What's the
But I
quality
think, B,
coming
we
out,
also
yeah.
need to figure out, like, are we okay with the way current roads are being built in this city and the quality they're being done at based upon what this study is saying? And I can also point out some roads in here, like, there's our neighbor that's black. It's because it only had the first level, never had the second level that summer, which is why. So I could have told you it was a crappy road because it wasn't completed. So, like, there are some things in here that are drastically different just because of where they were at in their process.
That's the River Hills, that little piece on River Hills.
That little black chunk of River Hills, yes, because it had the top layer on, it just had the base layer.
Yeah.
And
So,
that
did-
contractor's still doing that.
Did that
that
get
one's done.
fixed?
Huh?
Yeah.
It is
Sorry,
done?
We got three things going on here, but
Yeah.
Sorry.
I had heard too that there was some roads that were assessed that didn't have the wear code on them, and so they scored low. Did that get fixed in the final report
It
that
did
we've got?
not. It did not get taken out. So that did happen. We know of a few and they showed up yellow, so it was higher than black, but they showed up, in Brayburn trails. We know of that to have been the situation in a few of those. We did not take them out. So based on that, these are going to artificially read average slightly lower.
And artificially increase the amount of money we have to spend to get roads where we want them. Because
Yeah.
it's showing the roads lower
Sure,
quality
sure.
than they are. So
Yeah.
if we say, I think we're at 53, I can't remember, 53 now, we want to
Yeah.
get to 70. If we think we're really at a 60, and again,
Yeah.
picking around number, 'cause
Yeah.
it's-
It's probably
not
more
as
like
much.
a 54, 55, but to your point,
Sure.
yes.
Yeah.
Yep, you're right.
Yeah.
I would look at those graphs and those trajectories as trajectories, not as the exact number.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at those numbers from, we're at 53 to a 70, what I would rather have you look at it from, okay, it doesn't matter what number we are right now, where do you want to be? Do you want to be on that larger trajectory, which would be $2 million a year? We'll use that as in air quotes. Or 1.5 million, which is kind of that slight increase, or do you want to be that slight decrease? I would look at the trajectories more than the actual physical numbers that they are today.
Yeah.
Because those numbers are going to always vary, depending on what development's going on, what happened there, who's doing the roadway. Like, 113th needs to get redone, that's red and black, but we're not paying for that, that's part of the development. So we don't have to pay for that. Well, that shows our road is low, even though it's currently low, but
Right.
we're not paying for
Scores
it. We need
against
to
it,
take
right,
out
yeah.
those dollars. So what I would look at from the council perspective when you're picking a dollar amount, especially with this year's payment plan, is look at the trajectory you want to have.
Where do you want to see it go?
And pick one of the ones you want to have for the trajectory that you'd like to see our streets at. If it's $2 million, great. That just means we're going to be on a higher trajectory to get a higher number. We'll probably be more than 70% in 5 years, is my guess, if we use the $2 million number.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the point I was trying to make. Because if
Correct.
it's $2 million,
Yep.
we'll be way higher than 70 by the time.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Yep.
Assuming
In
we
this
continue to
report-
scale that budget based upon new roads being built in the city.
You got it. Yep.
How did you guys come up with some of the work that was listed out in here? How did you come up with that? I mean,
It's
is that
it's
based-
generated, so the software generates it.
But why would the software generate fixing Lawndale and north of Pineview, north of South Diamond, when those are two fair roads already, and they're not bad at all, but yet you're leaving East French Lake Road?
So
North of South Diamond? Oh, I
So
didn't
there's
catch
a lot
that.
of-
That was just redone.
there's
Not
before we get into any specifics on it, so there's algorithms that pull masses of data, and the data goes well beyond, is it fair, is it poor, is it good? It is anticipated, so this is a lot of the time that was spent late in the year to try to get the info in, because the city, the info wasn't readily available, so we had to populate all of this. So estimated traffic on every single
So say
segment
it was
throughout
Could be
the
a
system.
key factor. Yeah.
Pavement thickness, class 5 thickness, the substructure, what our guess at the soils are. So we did our best to recreate it. We went through all the record plans of the city going back into the 90s, I think, or maybe even prior. Pulled all that information together. So it is pulling all kinds of information, putting it into a generated system, running it through that decision tree, and then coming out with the thing. So The purposes of the fair, good, poor is for illustrative purposes
Yeah.
only.
The
It's not,
accuracy doesn't really mean a thing.
I would say that's not, I wouldn't agree with that. I would say the accuracy is a lot of what's driving it, is what's driving it.
It's not one or two data points, it's a whole bunch of data points come together.
It's
to
a,
an
it's
AI
a lot of them
algorithm.
that they aren't mapped, they're not on there, but they all go into, they all go into the equation that gives it its rating. And the system pulls back to the raw data. So it's not pulling fair for this section, it's pulling a 34.8. And it's pulling that, and that's how it's ranking it.
Right.
So
the
even though
color
on the
doesn't-
map, if it's at 50 or 20, it looks the same. It's very different on how it runs through the system, those two roadways.
So
The
for,
color doesn't actually
No,
drive
that's just,
anything, it's a
again, to
visual,
illustrate,
but I mean,
here's
if our
good,
goal
here's-
is 70, it doesn't matter if 30's a green or a black. I mean,
Yeah.
we're trying to get to a number, the colors aren't.
And again,
are-
it's
are
a
really
system-wide average too that we're targeting,
Right.
so,
so the question, and I know Jason made this point earlier, which is the question that Dennis had, Scott, to your point of East French Lake Road, it might be at a
Oh.
25. And so the reason why we're not gonna put something of a fix on that thing, which Lawndale, I think, is like I think it might be a chip seal or a crack sealing or something like that on it.
It's an overlay.
Okay, if it's an overlay, French Lake Road might be so far gone that
It's
it
gone.
makes more sense to not put an overlay over it, but totally reconstruct that. So to get the dollars available, I think it's in the $2 million one where it is reconstructed physically, in the $2 million one. And it's because it's so far gone, it makes more sense just to
Wait until
let
it's
it
gone.
go all the way till it's gone and then fix it, which is what your
Which
question
it
is.
may not be there 10 years from now, I mean.
Correct. But that's to the point of the formula is it's going, well, it's so far gone. If you put a mill and overlay on it, it's only going to last you 3 years because it's just so far gone. It doesn't make any sense.
When did we do South Diamond? Most of it. 2012, I want to say.
12, I think.
Yeah.
And that road's, it's shot already.
Did we do a full reconstruction on it?
Yeah.
That was overlay.
But you told us when we did Thicket Hills, the mill and overlay is about a decade, and we did it in 20.
Yeah, generally, just in the scheme, you expect about 7 years of pavement extension.
So
life
we're
extension.
past the 7 to 10 year lifespan of a mill and overlay, so it makes sense that if that's what we did last time, that Diamond Lake is
Time to do it again.
again.
And again, that's a heavier traffic road as well,
That's
Yeah.
very much true, yeah.
so.
We should move it. It's mine.
Well,
Whichever
without,
year's
Move
later.
let's talk about the west side, not the east side.
without a doubt, it's gonna take $1.5 million to $2 million to fix this problem.
Those dang
Well,
elk that keep running up and down the dang thing.
Time and money.
Yeah, so right now we're allocating roughly, it's over $1 million because we get roughly $1.1 to $1.2 million of current revenue that we're putting into the fund currently. And we're spending it, most of that, every year to try to keep the pavement as in projects. We also aren't not including in those dollars the money that Marty's spending on his operations budget to do crack sealing and all of those items. Those are coming out of Marty's operations budget, not out of the pavement dollars. So
How much is that?
I would say probably 40 to 50 grand. Does that sound pretty
Yeah, it's
close?
not a big chunk.
A bit more than that, but somewhere.
Yeah, I would
But
say
we're-
it's about that our operational budget also takes into account road salt and that stuff, so it's probably around 70.
70, yeah. So we're at 1.15 to 1.25 million per year we're putting into roads currently.
Because we're levying for $1 million, but
No,
We are
we're
don't-
levying
aren't we
for
also
600.
getting
We are levying 600.
600?
And then we get roughly 500-ish, depending on the
franchise
year,
fee.
for franchise fees, which is
Franchise fees.
another levy, but just another levy.
Yeah, I was wondering where that came into this number. so.
Yes,
And
so
then,
that comes into
and
that.
we haven't pulled MSA because of,
And the MSA dollars were pre-pulled for the Pine View project.
yep.
So essentially, we took 5 years allotments, the 350 times by 5, pulled that ahead of time. Instead of using levy dollars, we used that to that project to finish that up.
But
And to
this year
get to
we'll get some.
the $2 million,
This year
Roughly.
we'll get back to zero. We won't get,
It'll go back to positive.
we'll have positive this year, but not by much.
But we'll get something.
But from here on out, we will.
From here on out,
Yep.
we'll be positive, yes.
And
to get to the $2 million,
Yep.
we gotta levy roughly, this is just a rough number, $30 a home for 10 years to get it done.
To $30 a home a year, $30 a home a month, $30 a home for
$30 a year.
Increase or total?
Increase.
$30 a year.
I
It's like $2.50 a month.
well, I really hate it when people do that.
Yeah, but most people pay their mortgage monthly, so most people,
Yeah.
if you don't own your home,
But
you're
it's
not
like
paying your
saying,
taxes.
hey, it's only a mocha every day. What's
Yeah, but I didn't say that. My point
very
is,
condescending.
most people budget monthly.
I
Most
don't,
households do.
I'd be
so
surprised at the 30. That
That seems low to me. I thought
Yeah.
I thought you meant $30 a month. I didn't do the math, but I figured it was gonna be more than $2.5, $3 a
I don't
month.
have any more battery. There's roughly 3,500 homes in the city,
It's
correct?
160 a year for 3,000 homes, 500 grand. Are you talking about the extra 500 we need, or what are you talking about?
Well, you'd have to get to, there's 400 coming out of pavement, or the franchise fee.
So if we
So you have to
assume,
about 1.6.
if we're at about 1.5,
Yeah.
if we're there, we'd need 500 more. It's 166 a home. So it's
Dollars a
just
home per year.
$14 a month.
great.
Yeah,
Yeah, or, yeah, 2 mochas every
160 a year is,
Actually, today probably is 2 mochas at $14 a month. Mochas are cheap from what I
one and a
understand.
half now.
That sounds like one. Casey
If
knows.
it's so cheap, then
We have roughly 3,700 homes.
yeah, there's more than
3,600,
3,000 for sure.
yeah, then
I was thinking
then it's
35.
more by that much.
And again, it's going to vary. If your home's worth
No.
200 grand versus
Right.
if your home's worth 800 grand
Yeah.
or a million or whatever it is, you're
Yes.
But
It's
as
just a
we
rough
move
ballpark number.
forward, some of this TIF district stuff starts to roll back into us, and so then we're not
We've spent
talking
the TIF
about.
money, I feel like 6 ways to Sunday. We're spending it on everything, and there's only one pot of TIF that's
Well,
coming,
it's
so.
true, we have to prioritize what we're
I
doing
don't
with it,
disagree, I
but
just,
I think
there is one TIF
roads
district-
are one of our core functions.
I
so-
agree 100%. Roads should be a core function of the city, yes, I agree.
one of the TIF dollars, or one of
26.
the TIFs is gone now this year, and then I think one goes away in 2 years, 25 or 26.
26. We
And
talked
then the other one is supposed to be slated to be done in 2030. And then one more in 2032, 2031, depending on how fast it gets paid off, because those are some,
I think there's roughly
Project.
600 coming in 26.
sure.
I think so.
How much of these roads are
It's provided that the
currently,
county does their job and actually takes the TIF when they're supposed to.
there's that. How
You
much
can
of these
remind
are
them.
covered under current TIF spending, or any of these?
Say that?
So the current spending that is planned, or are there any roads in that area that are going to be getting TIF money?
No.
Or
No.
we've used it all, okay.
There's TIF dollars spent on some of the roadways.
Yeah,
I don't know if
already.
that's what you're asking.
Yeah, already spent those, but
Yeah.
that's it.
But West French Lake had segments that were,
Yep. The Spencer Road and the intersection has been done, and those have been already paid for and
Yeah.
done with. And,
yeah, the Dayton Park.
but that is it currently. I mean, there could be more TIFs depending on projects that come in, but
Yeah, well, yeah, and I don't know if we did, I don't think we counted this, but the 113th and the new possible road going up,
oh yeah.
we looked at.
This
maybe
does not
checking
include
something
any
there.
new roads.
No, I know
made
that.
either. So
Yeah, I guess this was a different question,
Yeah,
but
most of that is development. so.
is there something we can TIF to fund that, but whatever.
There's
So I've got
another-
a question for you, Scott, and just because you brought it up, but, so you're saying that the 2 million is the way you think we should go to fix the roads?
Well, you gotta fix the roads.
I don't
The roads
disagree.
are horrible.
I don't disagree with you one
They're
bit.
horrible.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm not setting you up. I'm just asking a question. Give me a second to get there, I promise. The question is in the past, when we've talked about raising taxes on this panel, 3/5 of this panel says we're not raising taxes. And so my question is, are we open to raising taxes to raise $500,000 to get us on track for the 2 million that we need annually to do this, or are we going to try to find other ways to do that? I just
To
want
my
to have a
point,
conversation about
to my point when I said earlier, this conversation should have been done 5 months ago before we spent $1.5 million on wages.
Well, it wouldn't matter.
Or
Yeah.
some of it, maybe some of it, I'm not saying all of it, but maybe 250 of it wouldn't have been spent. And I'm just throwing the 250 out there, it's just
Yep.
a mythical
Yep.
number.
Well, and I'd like,
It's
you know,
poor timing for this particular deal. I mean, it should have been taken care of a while.
It would have been great to have this when we were going over the budget.
The budget.
Absolutely.
Well, or,
I mean,
Yeah.
is this not the study that we spent $45,000 on?
what?
I thought we spent $45,000 on some of the
I
road
remember the
study.
cost.
I think it's pretty
Probably.
close.
Yeah, this is
Sounds
it.
right.
Probably,
Okay.
yep.
got pretty good help. I mean, compared to all the studies we get, I feel this one was very.
The timing would have never been able to, even if we would have followed the perfect timeline with it, it was supposed to be presented to us at the end of November.
Yep.
And so the timing would have never worked out for last year's budget anyways. The
No.
idea we got the information last year was, okay, we're going to go through this year's budget and we'll have good quality information to use for next year's budget when we started off, because it was going to be a 6-month, that's so long it takes to get the data, to get some information, to get something back. And we want to make sure it's good data and not just rushed data. I mean, we can give you something quick and rushed, but then you're going to, when something's wrong, you're going to go, well, why did you give us that? And we're going to go, well, we didn't have enough time to analyze it, so.
The other note I'll make is we did program some of the projects that we already had in alignment in here. So the recommended projects include Thicket Hills and 152nd and 113th, all projects that we anticipated being done this year. So they fit right in there with the budget and everything, so it was.
Right,
I
we're
don't
just
know if
low on our number in year 0 or whatever you want to call this year.
Yeah.
Year one, for something more aggressive than scenario 2, then yes, that'd be the case. And another option, I mean, to say, you don't have to pick 2 and do it this year. We could say, let's follow the recommendations or let's do as many of the recommendations on whatever scenario you want. We'll push the others back and we'll just use this and we'll delay them. Not ideal, but if you don't have the money this year, we just cut the scope and we add next year as we can.
We could do option 2 essentially this year, and the next year do option 4, the following year do option
Yeah.
4, maybe a little more to make up for whatever
Absolutely.
it looks like. We can,
Yep. Yeah, it's a fluid document. I spent actually a good chunk of my career using something similar to this. And it's a helpful tool, and it's never going to be 100% right. It just isn't.
Snapshot of time.
Right,
Yeah. So there's modifications every year. We would sit down and say we're going to tweak this plan for these reasons, and but overall it keeps you on track towards your goal. So it's a good place to recenter and focus.
Well, to me, you got to take care of the red before you take care of the orange.
I think there's variables to that though.
Yeah.
A lot of
I think David's point, the colors are visual aids, but there's
Yeah.
more that goes into it than just the color.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can give you the Excel spreadsheet, but it's super long and it's huge. I've seen it.
Yeah,
It gives-
it's
it gives
in
you
the
se-
report.
It
There's
gives
a-
you segments of
Well, that-
roads that says
actually,
here to
that's
here,
not
and it's like, if you don't know exactly where that road hits, I mean, you're like, this numbers go
Yeah.
out, and you get points and dots, and it's a lot.
Yeah.
Look at it.
Yeah, I think there's lots of room for that. I mean, if our overall goal is to get from 50 to 70, or where we are now to 70, the individual projects and the timing of those, I think that, that's an ongoing conversation.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it still doesn't take us away from the goal, because we know about what we got to spend to ultimately get there, so.
Yeah, exactly.
And, and if we do, which I would assume we would rerun this, or some, not the whole thing, but at least rerun the numbers probably a year from now, or budget time next year, and figure out where we're at. Yeah.
Was anyone else surprised, other than me, to see some of the newer developments have the road quality that they had?
I was.
So it goes back to the point. So I think we talked about the budget and what that looks like and how we achieve. I think from hearing everyone, we all think 70 or higher makes sense. But for right now, 70 kind of makes sense as a benchmark to move towards. But I think a real discussion should be had by council of, in the past, we've relied on developers to build roads. And based on this map, I would say they're not building quality roads for us. They're building roads, and they're building them cheap, but they're not building quality roads. And so as we have developments come, based upon this information that we see here, I'm not an expert, I'm just using what I see here. Do we need to talk about, well, maybe when we have developments go through, so them build the roads, we build the roads and charge them back for it, or however that works, so we can guarantee the quality of the roadways that we're getting put in.
And you're sure that because government does it, the quality would be better?
Yeah.
Well,
Did you just say that?
Or we have
set
different standards,
Right,
we set different standards
right?
for
Yeah.
they have to do.
Right
I'm
now,
open to options.
I think that's the right direction, because we have standards
fine.
now for what kind of roads they have to put in.
Just to note, a couple of things. We do hold developers to our standards. We require their standards. So I'm not going to make the argument that the roads wouldn't be better if it was under city control. But they do. It's not like we let them build whatever they want.
I understand that.
So I don't know if it would be some dramatic shift. I would agree it probably would be an improvement, just because you have tighter quality control. You don't have developers telling them how much they hate Stantec being on their jobs and how much they hate paying their bills, and because we're out there enforcing the city requirements.
But my guess is our costs would go up proportionally. just based on what we see day to day on
Developer costs would
projects.
go up proportionally, so on development projects. So I think what Matt's alluding to is what Maple Grove does, for example. So they come in with a preliminary plat with what they want to do. The city takes that and does the design for the final plat. They build it, and then they assess the cost back to the lots as they sell. So all of those costs go back on the development.
Do,
They go on to the future resident, not the developer.
Yeah, that's who it's gonna go to.
Yeah, they get paid at the time
It
of
always
lot
goes to
sale.
the
It's the same,
future
the cost is
resident
always
either
gonna
way,
come
no
down to
matter
the
how you
person
look at
buying
it.
the
That's
property.
the same as
Product,
park
right? Yeah.
dedication or anything else. It's a,
So there's ways of navigating that.
is there a way we
Fee
can
and
look at
lot.
this and see where our standards,
Let's say maybe start with
Arsenal.
ours.
Sorry,
is there something we can look at here where the quality of the new development roads aren't there that we could look at and see if we can improve our standards somehow to fix
Oh.
that?
If we just start the conversation
I mean,
there, right?
yeah, that's a
could,
good
but
point.
we use a pretty standard, we make each development come in with soil recommendations. So
Sure.
we make them do the geotechnical exploration and come in with the recommended structure for the streets. And then we field adjust, so that's why we're out on the site, and we'll see poor materials, we'll make them take more material out, and so we're adjusting on the fly. We could look at it, I don't know if we'd find
So I
patterns
guess
with
then it
this,
gets
or if,
to the question of why would we build them better then? If
Yeah,
if we think we're holding them to our standards,
yeah, I don't know if it would be better. I don't expect it to be drastically different.
Okay.
Again, if you have a city contract and you have supervision on the site, and you're holding the contractor more tighter to the requirements, I would argue you get a better product. Now, we've actually put together some, it's just a visual, but there's kind of a diminishing return, if you will, too. So if you have folks out there watching the contractor, zero amount, you get really low quality. If
Yep.
they're out there 10%, you get probably pretty good quality. And then it's increasing, but as it comes to 100%, it's probably leveling off to some extent.
right.
With developments, they want us to be at zero. So we do our best to stay around 10 or 20 or whatever it might be. A city project, we're probably going to hang out in the 80, just because if it were a city-led project, because now you have the funding aside for those services, and you have a higher level of inspection. So again, at least our perception would be you get at least some increased quality from that.
And again, I'm not saying my answer's right. I'm just saying I feel like when I look at this map, I was a lot of things surprised me. That surprised me a lot. Almost to the point where you, knowing where certain builders are in certain developments in the city, you can see maybe where certain builders did a better job of building the road than the builder right next door to them, based upon the fact that the roads are not that different in age, and yet there's, again, one could technically be a 70 and one could be a 69. We wouldn't know based on this, so it does get a little tough. But based upon the colorations, which we're trying not to use, it can be misleading. Maybe I don't know.
Yeah, it seems to me though, if we're seeing poor quality there, that means either our standards aren't up to the study's standards,
Could be.
or we're not holding them to the.
Yeah, we get a lot of pushback from developers. I'll tell you, we hear about
I
it
don't doubt that.
constantly.
Yeah.
You're on our site too much. You're just trying to bill us more money. You're just trying to do this and that. And unfortunately, Jason takes the fall on most of it because I don't know what's happening. And then he has to stick up for the fact that we're out there. And I don't disagree that. So that's a fallback that we have, is we're going to hear more development feedback that we're out there too much because we're trying to enforce a better standard. And then you guys are likely going to hear about it. Just overall, it's going to happen because they're going to go, well,
But
you guys are out too much.
It does seem like there's certain areas that,
Yep, I would agree.
value-wise, that are good to have on site. When
Yep.
they're doing the utilities, it seems
Yeah,
like we
there's
should
more
be all over
critical
that.
parts too. So
Yep.
it's not all of the time when they're out there. It's when they're doing certain
Yep.
items, and that's where we try to focus our time as well and,
Yep.
and find that
but
balance.
is it, and I see where the more supervision of this is going to guarantee that the standards that we're holding them to are being met. But I'm wondering if overall these development roads are failing quicker than we would anticipate them, then, do we need to be requiring more subbase or more thicker pavement or a better wear coat, or, that's what I'm kind of asking about.
Yeah.
Is
And
it,
the
it could-
concrete mix with the
Portland cement?
with the
Yeah.
gravel.
Well, I wouldn't recommend Portland cement. for residential areas, just 'cause if you have utility issues, you got real problems. That's better for rural areas. Yeah, I mean, you could, MnDOT has spent a fortune setting up, standards and design procedures and tools to help you get the appropriate roads. So roads are built, flexible pavement, so the blacktop roadway is designed for 20 years. That's what everybody does. You design for 20 years. And with proper maintenance, you could probably get 50 to 60 years of life out of it. So assuming it wears normally, and you do the proper mill and overlays, and then there's, maybe it would be more structural. You grind everything up and you repave. So that's kind of the pavement life. To build something that's not going to deteriorate, now you're probably building I'll just make it up, like a 40-year roadway. But that's probably going to double your cost on it. So I don't know if that probably breaks development projects too, because they can only afford to build so much. So,
But Jason, you say that, and I know for a fact when South Diamond Lake was done, we were told back in 2012 that was going to be a 20-year repair, and we got roughly 11 out of it.
Oh, I wasn't involved. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I know.
That was, yeah.
I know there was a reconditioning and minor realignment proposed on it. That, to me, would make a whole lot more sense that would have been promoted as a 20-year fix, not what was actually implemented. There was two options, is my understanding.
It was all milled.
That was what was actually done.
Yep.
There was two alignments because they were going to take some of the bends out.
Right.
So that would have been a full reconstruction through that segment, and then I think they would have fully reclaimed all of the pavement and rebuilt it. I would anticipate that probably would have been a 20-year plus fix. I've never heard of a mill and overlay being claimed. I'm not saying it's not. I wasn't part of it, but it probably shouldn't have if it was a mill and overlay, because there's pretty standard deterioration curves that show a 7-year. That's the assumed value. But
I can't imagine the soils are that great over there.
I'm guessing they're pretty poor by the lake.
No, I'm not. By the lake's not even, on this map, that's fair. Right in front of my house is where that was all done.
That's
and
intentional.
I mean, that road's shot.
No, I know.
Maybe it's all those semis carrying elk all the time. Maybe we should assess that business a little more.
Yeah, I was surprised too. A lot of the things that are up here, I'm surprised lots of staff as well. So.
Okay.
Any other comments, questions?
Well, glad to finally see this.
Yeah.
And I think we've all beat that horse to death, but it's good information. I think it gives us a starting point, and we can develop a plan based on it. I'm sure we'll tweak it with what goes 14th or 17th, but I think this is what we needed, and it gives us a place to, because our budgeting up to this point is, if you look at the city's, what we've done for pavement management over the last 10 years has been all over the map. And what else was there to go on? Well, I think this is, if we are going to deviate from what we want as a goal for the quality of our roads, then we're making a political statement that we don't care, because now we know what it's going to cost.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad for it. I think it's a good report. I think we'll get good use out of it.
I think it's one of the few reports we've commissioned and gotten back that I feel is somewhat actionable against. And I think to me, that's a benefit. Oftentimes we pay for these reports and I feel like we don't get a lot out of them. It tells us exactly what we already knew. I feel like this was a report that actually, after reading it, I felt much more, at least informed scientifically versus, here's how the wind's blowing, how the road looks, whatever kind of conditioning. And so I'm with you. I think the report is
Is
one of the
mill and
better
overlay
reports
the
this year.
common repair for most of this?
On the recommended projects? Or
No,
just like
Just to
generally
fix,
for pavement?
just general, to fix a poor condition road.
So the treatment's dependent on how good of the quality. So a mill and overlay, so kind of the general, I was actually hoping there was one in the plan, there was not. These are floating around in reports that people use. So it's kind of the lifespan. Like I said, you design for 20 years, and then with the proper treatment, you have your normal deterioration curve. And then you'll mill and overlay, it'll bump up 7 years, and then it'll go down. And then mill and overlay, bump up 7 years, and then it'll go down. And then you do something more significant, like a full depth reclamation. You dig everything up and all new pavement. That'll buy you probably, I don't remember the term,
15.
but like a 15-year or some life. So it's that. Seal coats and other surface treatments, I mean, you could do a slurry seal or a micro surface or something else to seal the pavement. Another cheap application, which they give you little blips. I mean, they'll go 1 to 3 years.
By a year.
So
There's a graph in the report that shows what you're talking about, right?
it wasn't quite as in depth, but yeah,
Yeah.
there was one in there where it had the lines under the curve for the deterioration. It wasn't the standard one that I've liked.
Yeah.
I haven't seen since 2000s probably, but one I liked anyway. But no, very common to answer your question, because it's not that expensive. But all those cracks come back through.
Yep,
They just do.
Yep, they just
So,
do, yeah.
It'll be 1 to 3 years, and all of those cracks will be right up at the surface.
So indirectly, in the next 7.5 years, all that red has got to have some sort of work done it, realistically. And that by the time the red is done, then you got the orange.
And it's never ending, because nothing's going to stay green.
Because by then
Nothing's gonna
the
stay
green
green.
will be back to red, so we'll have to do that.
Yeah, it'll cycle. Hopefully it
Then the green
cycles
is orange.
evenly.
Yeah, you want.
Yeah.
The
You
idea
know, like
is-
you don't want all your appliances in your house to break at the same time.
Yeah.
What is mill and overlay per mile?
For a cost?
It's in the report.
Yeah,
had it-
we have it by a square foot. Oops.
Yeah, I think you had it on the screen too at one point in time.
Yeah,
All right, there it
this
is.
one.
There it is, yep.
Yeah. That's the cost of each of the different kinds of road
So-
fixes.
Yeah,
for-
so the
per foot?
edge mill and full mill,
Yeah.
I mean, that is just dependent on a couple factors, whether or not you have curb and
230.
utilities. So 280 is a square foot times a
Square
30-foot
foot.
width times 5280, I suppose would
You're
be a per
making it kind of
mile.
complicated. You should have done it per mile.
Well,
Or
you
per-
got different width roads, so.
Well, how wide is it? 230?
Usually they're 30-foot wide.
So 30 foot
That's
wide
just
times
standard.
by 5,280.
30 feet? Most roads are 24 to 28, right?
31 back-to-back of curves, so they're a little narrower of the pavement, but
So that's roughly, so if we use the 230 per foot, that's about 30 feet wide, is 364,000 per mile.
It's about what I think we've seen.
No change orders, it'll be 450.
and these prices are ever changing, and they even can fluctuate year to
Sure.
year. Because you get a change in the cost of resin, and your mixed price goes up by $4, and you just added
450 times
5% on your
35.
project. So I mean, it's,
Yeah.
I mean, we do our best to get
It's 17 million bucks.
a unit price, but
And getting back to, you think 70 is an optimal number. You don't want to get higher, you don't want to get lower.
that
You'll
I mean,
never-
yeah,
you
yeah,
won't
yeah,
keep
to
up
have
with
an
it.
average, I think. I mean,
Yep.
it's not realistic to say 90. I don't think.
No.
Because
And-
now all your roads are so good
Right.
that
Yeah.
they're going to deteriorate. That's, I mean, and I've heard that for years on different rating systems.
You'll,
I
you'll
think
go
70
broke
is
trying
a,
to keep them higher than that.
Well,
yeah, I think 70 is I think that's a good goal. I think
Is there a piece where like on a 20-year road, it deteriorates really quick for the first 5 years and kind of like levels out? Or is it pretty steady the whole time? Like, are there grades that, or how does that work?
Yeah.
Or is it exponentially increase in deterioration?
It can be any combo of that, and it depends mostly on the underlying soils and then the loading. So, for an example, I mean, just to give a little perspective, a semi-truck is about equivalent to, I did the math on this at one time, I think it's like 160,000 passenger vehicles. One semi does more damage than 160,000 cars driving down the road. So it's really that heavy truck traffic. So it can vary, because if that traffic pattern changes, then it's going to deteriorate much quicker because
All
of
those
it.
FedEx trucks
But
going
the-
on South Island.
Yeah.
I don't think those are
For real, yeah.
those aren't nearly as heavy
Maybe
as.
River Hills has a lot of deliveries.
146, I can count how many semis go by my house a day, if that helps you at all.
That might be why you're in the fair range.
And on a 2-year-old road, could be.
Too many Amazon clickers.
Correct.
I think the road's better than fair in all candidness, but I drive it up whenever I leave, I walk it, whatever. That's why the color, I think, is somewhat subjective. I think it's more.
All right. So
We need to accept the report. Is that the S today?
Yes.
Yeah, again, no formal action. There's no necessarily next step other than, again, just the thought to use this in informing the CIP for future projects. I guess staff's initial thought, and Marty and Zach can speak up if you don't agree. Our thought was, let's target the 1.5 million. And those projects, it keeps us on an upward trend. We can even evaluate next CIP and budget review, and if we want to get more aggressive or we want to stay the same for next year, then that's fine. We'll just adjust the projects recommended accordingly.
Well,
That doesn't fit what we all just said we wanted, though.
No,
Also, we wanted.
What? No, I was just sharing what
Okay.
we thought. So if there is any input for
That's
that,
putting an extra
for sure.
half a million to it. This is already in 1.1 or right around $1 million
Yeah.
going in there.
hold
So
on a
I
second.
actually did include in case. So these are just the other indices. So
For what?
These two indices make up.
To Matt's point, the ride quality, a lot more green on there. They ride fine, but it's the stresses, the pavement, which is the one on the right,
Yep.
that are more red, and that's what's bringing them down, if you will. So they don't seem that bad when you're driving on them, but the condition is. So maybe that helps illustrate that.
We should have done Dayton Road just to show the county how crappy their road is.
We should,
We're not watching.
Yeah, they don't care.
it would be
That's
interesting
not
to
fair.
rate theirs. I don't think we want to pay for it, but be interesting to see what they are.
They have their own scale. Where is
So I
it?
did include, I know these are really tiny. Yeah, I knew I wouldn't be able to get them big enough on there, but those are the recommended projects for the 1.5 million. And then the 70 PCI, so.
Just don't put them projects on the schedule right away, please. 'Cause I don't agree with the way the projects are set up.
Oh, sure. So just a note on these, you'll see 152nd Thicket Hills are both identified on there. That's because we programmed those in as well as
The 24 ones are
113.
programmed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
those are fine. They
Yeah.
have to be
The
done.
And then the
100 ones are.
113 Dapple
Yeah.
from Brook, as Zach mentioned,
Those
that
should
should be
have been done
completed by the
4 years
developer.
ago.
So, all right, so we're talking about the 2025.
Yeah, we're talking about
Budget.
25 and beyond budget.
Yep,
I mean,
yep.
Everything for 24 is planned and going, we're
Yeah,
moving forward.
plus we'll know better with MSA where that's at.
Yep.
Plus, that's gonna fill most of that, so we may even, we'll see where everything comes in, but.
You got it.
Okay, so you want us to accept this? I need a motion and a second.
I'll motion.
I'll second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say no. 5-0. Okay, item L.
Yes, Mayor and members of council, this is a last minute item. I apologize about the delay here, but we took a little bit to get the proposals together, and I wanted to make sure I got both of them from Black and Beach and from Stantec to do this environmental review on the Wellhead treatment plant. It was added tonight because we're trying to get this thing moving forward so we can get this thing through the door at the end. The faster we get started, the faster we can get them done. If you have any questions, let me know. The two proposals are in the packet. They were significantly different in time frames and stuff. Stantec has worked on a couple of them for communities around here, including Corcoran. And so they are familiar with the process, and I'm hoping that they can help us speed this process up.
So I have a question. I think the one that's being recommended is the Stantec
Yes.
proposal, and I'm fine with that. In that proposal, which had a lot more detail in it, for one thing, but there's a couple of tasks, and task 1 and task 2 are listed as city tasks.
Yep.
And do we have the ability in-house to do these things?
I've already done those. Most of them, yep.
Okay, so you're not concerned by the things that we need to do to move this thing along?
Correct.
In addition to what we'll potentially contract Stantec to do?
Yep, so I am taking on the responsibility of adminning the whole task, basically doing all the reporting and all the responses back and forth to Heroes and DUNS numbers and SAM.gov and all that other stuff. So I'm taking that in-house because it makes it way easier if I can keep pushing the project too, to keep it on task as well. So, and then I don't need to pay Stantec to do it. I already have done most of this stuff already. So.
Okay, that was my question.
Anything else? Okay, I will need a motion and a second.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Item M.
Yes, Mayor, member of council, I figured it would be a short meeting, so I wanted to get this on the discussion, although we've gone 45 minutes past what we expected to be done. What we're looking for, Amy and I are both looking for the topics that we'd like to have on the ballot. I know I sent this question off back few weeks ago or a month ago now on a weekly update, said, okay, give me some topics you want to talk about. Here's some suggestions. I got back various feedback. What we need to do is, I don't need to know the questions today, and we can decide those at a future meeting, but I need to know the topics we want to add. Amy's been doing some research on trying to figure out what we can ask, what we can't ask on the ballot, and trying to figure out, is it a referendum question? Is it just a general survey? It sounds like it has to be a referendum question from what I understand, but Amy and I are basically here to answer your questions and try to establish those topics so we can then develop the questions if those topics are ones we want to talk about.
And if it is a referendum question, we would have to actually come up with actual language sooner rather than later, just with ballot orders and everything, so we're looking at.
Yes. Which is why it's on tonight's agenda as an
Sure.
added item, because it's just a discussion item, not a central
Early
action.
August, I believe we would have to know by.
Correct.
Oh,
So
all
we,
right.
we have time.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
that's, but it's.
Because it would only go on the general
So I know
ballot.
Champlin has they have a citywide, it doesn't go on the vote, but they somehow get residents to, they will put out questions to the residents, and I'm not sure what kind of mechanism they use. I don't know if it's as simple as, like a Survey Monkey, but it sounds like they get quite a few responses to those. I don't know what the mechanism is.
I don't either, yeah, we can find out.
It's a survey, so it is a scientific survey that they use, so there's a number of cities that do that. It's so more accurate than Survey Monkey.
So they hire a firm.
Correct.
Is this another $40,000?
Yeah, right.
Less than that.
Okay.
I can reach out to Champlin and figure out
39.
if that's something we want to do. But
Yeah, I don't know. It may or may not be worth it. It sounds like, at least on a couple of the questions, they get wildly varying responses, but.
I know the city of Otsego just did something as well. We could reach out and see who they use, because they had a really high turnout, yeah.
Right. Sure. Yeah, I guess my only question about that is what kind of infection, I mean, sometimes you get people, well, everybody's familiar with Facebook, right? Things can go in the ditch in a heartbeat over absolutely nonsense, so it'd be nice to know if somehow they controlled for that. Correct. So we need questions by August if we do.
yeah, correct. So I'd like to establish the topics today so that we can take the next few months to figure out if we want those topics to turn into questions. We need to have a question, exact word for word, established by the council.
And there's other, you'd have to call a special election, at least.
Yeah, there's some other processes, obviously, but I'm just trying to get ahead of the things and not be so hateful.
Last minute, and then,
Yep.
I wanted to ask a question, but we didn't meet the timeline.
So last time around, I think we discussed the possibility of putting a question around parks referendum, and then we were too late to include that in the ballot. I'm not sure what the question, the community park, or the community athletic park,
Yeah, I think so.
And so I have an interest, at least us talking about it, is that a question or a path we want to go down is asking for a referendum around parks funding. The community athletic fields, is an ongoing topic for us. I also...
Are we calling it an athletic field complex, or are we calling it community park?
I think you have to call it an athletic,
My question is directly at that exact question. Which is
And you
why.
can call it, why couldn't you call it a community park? Or a city park?
because people look at those two things separately.
Mhm.
It's my opinion that people are done with parks, but they do want an athletic park.
You're talking about
So we want to
maybe
call
$2 million
that out.
versus 25 or 30 million.
So if you
Yeah,
look
but I
at
don't-
the
yeah.
two community parks, you look at LC Stevens as a community park
community
because
park.
that doesn't have any athletic complexes at it.
Right.
It's more of a hangout area, city festival kind of deal versus the athletic complex, which would have baseball fields and
Right.
soccer fields and the
Pickleball field.
So I'm asking about
Fields.
both, really. The athletic fields, because that's an ongoing question, and I think a big enough cost that we need to look at, how we would fund that.
Yeah.
I also personally feel like that we ought to find a way to speed up the progress on LC Stevens. that we ought to try to finish this thing in my lifetime, and 500,000 a year might not get us there, so. It's
Well,
not a
the other
statement
thing
on
is-
my-
I'll piggyback on that, which is trails. So right now, all of our trails money comes from development, and so I think we have a lot of trail needs. So we're getting close, but I think if we can find better ways to connect different parts of the city together, if you could, we have a fireworks show at LC Stevens, and you can bike from Sundance Greens all the way down there through, through Rivers Park District and safely get there with your family. I think that's a different experience than everyone trying to drive there. And so as far as my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, all of our trails budget comes from Granger homes being built.
Yep.
So we see varying amounts of that, and then I think it'd be helpful for us to invest more in trails.
I think the problem comes in there. Most of, or a greater percentage of all the park fees and trail fees that come from a development, we're putting them back into that development with the neighborhood park.
Which is why we
And
need
the
more trails
And the
running.
trails in that neighborhood.
Which is why we need, well, in
I-
fairness, you'll see it in a couple of weeks, but a good chunk of money that the Parks Commission has recommended is going to a trail that's nowhere near, like, it's connecting existing neighborhoods to new neighborhoods. So I think they're trying to do that, but their budget is limited and those trails aren't cheap. And so that'd be my point.
So that may be something else too. We seem stuck on, and again, we seem stuck on 8 feet wide paved trails. Drives me nuts. But people do want trails. That is one thing that I will hear over and over again. That they want trails, but our trails are expensive.
Yeah, I don't disagree. So so my point is, I don't know if we want 3 separate ones around that, or if we want one that's just investing in parks and trails, and then go from there. I don't have a preference how we do it. I just talked about 3 different things. I'm open to ideas, but I think all 3 are valuable.
I don't have that answer either.
We'll leave it with
how
staff. All 3 are valuable.
I mean, if we've got some kind of consensus around including that as a question, then I think we do need to focus on what is that language. Specifically, what are we asking for?
So it's going to be hard to create a referendum question just off the top of my head. They could be able to say, we're going to be able to put this much money towards parks and trails, and have people be able to go, yep, I want to put that much money towards parks and trails because it's going to be too anonymous or too vague. Yep. If we did something specific about an athletic field or athletic complex, and then one for community park and then one for trails, everyone would be able to get. And I don't know if we're limited for questions, but I'm assuming we can't have 46 on there. But I mean, you want to have a couple of them, sure.
I'd have to do some research.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% on that.
So I have 3 so far that we want on there on the ballot so far: trails, athletic field, and community park. Is there any other topics? And again, these are just preliminary ones. Nothing saying it's set in stone or it's going to happen. But
So I've got one I think I'd like to see, which is, we've talked about it, we've had residents ask about it, asking residents to vote on a 25-mile-an-hour residential speed limit. I think it gives them the option to choose, doesn't put it in our 5 hands. It allows them to, decide what they want, what speed they want people to go through the neighborhood. I think when we looked at Pineview Meadows, one of the things we learned is people can't even go 30 on those roads, and when they're going 25, it seems fast, right? And so I don't even know if we have those, based upon whether those design the appropriate speed limits on there to begin with.
I know it's
I
read
thought
every morning.
Paul
and
already
it's-
concluded that people weren't speeding anyway. Correct?
At 30 miles an hour, yeah, that's not, you're not hearing what I'm saying, but yes.
But if they're not speeding at 30, are they speeding at?
It's difficult
Is
to get above
27
20
mile,
on
25
those.
going to help?
It is, but we had a couple people going 27, 20. So like they aren't speeding technically, but
Yep.
I don't know. I would argue that, again, I think if we're gonna, let's just give them the choice. It's people's neighborhoods. If that's what people want, they vote for it, and majority in the city wins. I don't know why we
You're
wouldn't
not going
want
to do that in a particular neighborhood, though.
No, it'd be citywide. Residential neighborhoods would be limited to often
I
25
don't
miles.
think I'd put that on the ballot. I think that's something you do on the survey once year, the survey deal.
Yeah, that's kind of trivial, I think. 5 miles an hour is not
Your
that
costs
big
are
a
going
deal.
to be the study that engineer
Yeah,
has to do in the sign placement.
The idea of the scientific survey is, or the opinion survey is, if you're gonna ask for, just say, $100 million and the response comes back of, no, I'm not paying more than 10 million, don't waste your money on a referendum.
Say that again?
So the idea of the survey is to find out, how much support is there for whatever question you're asking for. And
Yep.
if there's not much support, then don't bother with the referendum. Like that, then you're asking the wrong question on the referendum.
So what
So
you're
I'm
saying
there-
is bypass the ballot do the survey before the ballot to figure out what your support level is before you put it on the ballot to figure out if it's gonna actually happen or not. is what
Yeah,
you're telling
if
me.
there's a
Oh,
wide
okay, I
support,
see.
it's more of an issue if you're asking for money, if it's the issue of speeding, or not speeding, but the speed limit. I mean, if there's a lot of support to decrease the speed limit, then just do it.
Just, yeah.
Well, how would you know that? SurveyMonkey is not a broad,
No, that's the scientific survey.
oh, you're
So,
talking
yeah.
about, okay.
So then why do any, although
The
unless you're
ballot
gonna
thing
ask them
doesn't
for
cost
money,
money,
why
does
do any
it?
referendums to that? You know what I mean? Like, it becomes a,
I would want that on a referendum if it's a chunk of money, but.
Yeah.
that's, I agree, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, so
It's
what
chunk-
John's point is, says in the survey, you could ask them a range of what would you support. You could ask them a range of information, and we could get that range, then we would have a better idea to put on the ballot question versus just asking them, okay, we want to put $100 million park on here, and they all say no, well, would they have said yes to 50 million? We don't know because we have to ask a yes or no question on the ballot. We can't ask a multiple choice question.
Yeah, that makes
So-
sense, but is that what you said?
Yeah, Zach did a
Okay.
better job at it. So, Champlin, I believe their council had an idea of, they wanted the 60% of the residents to say that they would support it through the survey before they would put it on a referendum. And I
Okay.
don't think they hit 60%, or they're close,
Correct.
not close enough, I guess.
Because on that survey, we could do a multiple choice question.
Yeah.
What's your varying support? And then if we get the feedback and everyone says, yeah, I'll support it, but only up to X many dollars, well, if we put on the referendum something that's way higher, well, we're never going to get the answer. It's going to be no.
But I guess my point is why would, so you would use, if you want to use it with every referendum question before it was a referendum, we can talk about it, but why would that change on parks and trails versus we don't want to do referendum for speed limits? Because it's the same thing. Would you support this, yes or no? We're just trying to get varying, we're trying to get an idea whether or not we'd support it before we put it on the ballot.
Because the cost isn't phenomenal to what your taxes are gonna go up. If you do a referendum on a $100 million park, your taxes are gonna go up.
Right.
I get that part.
If you go at 25 miles an hour citywide, your taxes aren't gonna go up.
I guess I trust the voting more than I trust the survey, but that's me.
I mean, even if you pose that question, you
You have to word it, but-
$100 million park is way overboard, but,
We're just throwing money, or dollars out there. Numbers.
100 million is nothing, Scott.
we're not building the Metrodome.
Really?
You'd have to pose it.
We
This
could
park
ask
is
the
gonna
budget.
cost roughly.
Yeah, you'd have to pose on the referendum. It will cost the
Otherwise,
average
people
home.
won't have, everybody's gonna say no to a $100 million
Yeah,
park.
correct.
But if you say it's gonna cost you $450 a
Correct.
year for the next 20 years,
Yeah, you'd have to run the math to figure out what the
Might be
average home is.
different.
Just like, I think we
might
talked
be a
about this last
different
year.
outcome.
Yes, we did.
It says you have to give them a dollar amount. If the average home would cost you this many dollars and the average home is this many dollars, and then they can figure it out from there. Well, my house is worth more than that, so I'm probably gonna pay more than that.
Yep.
Or my house is exactly that, and it's gonna cost me $16 a year. I don't care. You know?
Right.
Or it's gonna cost me $1,600 a year. Well, now I care. So.
right.
So you're saying because there's really no cost to it.
The cost would be the signs and then engineering staff time to do the study.
Well, there's other probably non-dollar amount costs.
Yeah, I would have to look too. I don't know if we can ask that question on a ballot.
I
Oh,
don't
it
see
set
the
a specific
importance of
ordinance.
that question if your
Ordinance.
police chief is telling you that it's not really an issue. Myself, but.
I don't know if he's saying it's not an issue, but okay.
well,
Okay.
he's
Any other
saying
any other topics? I've heard these. I've heard three.
Yeah,
I'll
so,
make sure to keep the meeting moving forward. Get out of here.
and I know I had asked
What?
I know.
Amy about this at one point on how we might even be able to do this, and it doesn't seem like it's the hot topic that it was for a minute, but I have wondered about us asking a question about level of support for the city leaving Hennepin County. So I know
Oh, yep, okay.
we, to put it on a ballot as this is what we're going to do, there's a huge amount of signatures that have to go onto a survey that gets presented before it can become a ballot question of we're leaving or we're not leaving. My question is intended to gauge interest, because if a significant amount of this community, meaning more than 50%, has no interest in us pursuing this thing, then then we're wasting our time even more than the mountain that we would have to climb to actually try to pull it off. So this has to go through the other Amy.
Yep.
I realize, but
And I think you have to have a petition to be able to add that question onto the
well,
ballot.
that's the actual "we want to leave" question. I understand that
Yep,
one, and that's
yep.
not what I'm trying to ask, because that's a big mountain to climb to actually get the petitions out there and for all the concerned parties, which
Right.
wouldn't just be us, including county, whatever county we think we want to go to, because they get the right to vote on it as well and have to have a petition that they sign. What I'm asking is, do we spend another 30 seconds on this thing or not? If we don't have half of this community supporting that idea, then why are we wasting our time on it? And so the question I would like to ask would be, would you be in favor of the city pursuing the option of leaving Hennepin County? It's not we will or we won't, it's do you want even us to spend time on this or not?
Is this you're not talking about-
We heard some significant opinions about this, that this Hennepin County is terrible and we need to move on. But, that's the people that like to give their opinions about everything. Is that the majority of the community? Absolutely not. We don't know where everybody is on this, and so that's why I'm interested in that being a question.
Let me ask Attorney Amy, to figure out if we can,
A question
what the question, or could we pose it, or
on the
whatever.
ballot or a question through SurveyMonkey or?
We can do the survey for whatever we want to. We can ask
Right,
them if we think UFOs are real, but I mean,
Right.
I just want to make sure we get real
Is that a
information.
question?
Yeah, it's,
Sorry.
It's a good question.
Conspiracy Theory Thursdays.
Yeah, we can ask them any question you want to on the survey.
yeah, and maybe that's the better approach. Maybe we can't ask this on the ballot.
Yeah, I have
that's
to get
just my
clear
interest.
Yeah, let's get
direction
more
around that. I feel like it has to be centered around a referendum question. So, and I don't know how you would twist that to,
And
Or possibly.
I think if this waited to referendum to November, it's too late anyways, because the window has to do with the number of voters last time. And I know Champlin's still digging into what they can do, but
Champlin's not good. That was a whole political hoax.
no.
Any other comments? Otherwise, we're.
So I know a year ago there was conversation on a municipal liquor store. As we look at increasing costs in the city and ways to offset those with other revenue opportunities. Is there interest up here of re-pursuing that as an option for the city? To
Not by me.
offset?
so I think
Tax
we
reform.
are past the ability to do that. However, new and upcoming, we would be able to discuss a
Pot store.
Cannabis.
That's what Austin
cannabis
is.
store, yep,
A dispensary.
for a
Yeah, I think we're
revenue
past the
source.
liquor store option.
Like you said,
Yeah,
until
the
we officially
state
hit the-
kind of was like, that's far-fetched, you can't really do that.
We reached out after last year's conference. Recently, it wasn't.
Okay.
This isn't old news. A cannabis store? You want to talk about that one, or segue, or no? The city of Osseo is
Are you gonna
pursuing
give
it.
the city of Osseo all that
Hard.
revenue? Because that's where.
Huh? Oh, yeah.
Hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
They have to offset their levy somehow.
I was gonna say.
Have you
We
seen
should
their
be doing
levy?
the same, right?
They got hammered. I have a problem with government in business, so I don't know. It depends on probably the
The revenue?
particulars. Well, not necessarily that, but I mean, some areas aren't gonna be able to put up a store. Do we have enough traffic? I don't know.
Yeah, there'll be actually requirements for the county on, how many stores.
It can be housed inside the county itself.
Yeah, there'll be, actually a requirement to have so many,
Mm-hmm.
so a minimum.
But that doesn't
that's where they're
dictate municipal versus private. It's the
Correct.
It
total.
doesn't, nope, it's,
On every 25 square miles or something.
I think it's Hanover or is planning on doing it and just not opening one up, so.
To
I
like
don't know.
secure their 25-mile area.
The deal is, you know, people are gonna buy it, it's just a
Yep.
matter where they buy it and, you know, who's selling
Do
it.
you want everything from it or not? Yeah.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, we don't open grocery stores for, I don't know.
Yeah, my objection is the same as that. I don't feel like we should be competing with private business, and so it's my same thoughts around the municipal liquor store as this. I think that if we want to allow them or not, fine, but I don't think we should be in that business.
Okay. Any other topics? Otherwise, I have 4, and then we talked about a couple more, and it sounds like we don't have enough support of the council, which is fine.
Any more? Anything else? If there are no objections, we'll be adjourned then.
Goddamn routine.
We're adjourned.